from beyond. Listen, and all you desire will be yours. Welcome to Spider-Dan and the Secret Balls. Prepare for Prattle.
Secret Ball Stories. Welcome to Prattle World. I'm your host, the ever-amazing, ever-spectacular Spider-Dan, and in this podcast, I spotlight entertainment's best-kept secrets that a mainstream audience may find boring. And welcome to Secret Ball Stories, where I invite guests to count down a personal top 5 list in high-fidelity fashion. And it has been a long road getting from Hudson Hawk to Johnny Mnemonic to this. 200 episodes. And 100 episodes ago, I was joined by this very man, the biggest fan of Prattle World there is. And there's a lot of contenders out there. There's a lot of big fans out there, but still the first. He was here on the ground floor. The day one, he was here waiting for content, even if it wasn't great. He was there. He was listening, and he was there on the journey, and he saw the vast improvements. He saw the increase of wealth, of technology, of skill, the improvement, the gradual improvement of Prattle World. And we are here today at episode 200. I'm joined again by I Am Jack's Musings. We met for the very first time that first episode. Again, we had to rework some things to make sure it was the genuine first meeting. We had to do it quite early. And this one we're doing early as well. But I'm so glad to have you back. And this was chosen by the patrons as well, because 2024 is for the patrons, which you are one of. And everybody seemed, well, actually, no, the patrons, it was a tie, I think, between one, I think it was the one with Max and Andy for Indiana Jones and Temple of Doom, and this. I thought you'd won, and then I think someone snuck in like a one final vote, or I didn't put like an end point to the poll. I can't remember whatever it was. Who knows? Who knows what happened? But then I put it out to the public, but still by a massive majority, the public voted for this. So we're going to list our top 5 best and worst films covered on this podcast, and there's a good range to pick. High level, good quality stuff, that you may have never heard of, stuff you may have heard of, stuff you might want to forget. But because I'm so forgiving of a lot of these films, I'm not too harsh. I'm like, I'll find something good in them. I'm going to list my top 5 worst, and Jack here is going to list his top 5 best. Wow, this has been a long time coming, but how has it been the last 100 episodes for you?
Oh, it's been great. Thank you for having me back on. Obviously, it's nice to celebrate another milestone with you, and it's always a treat for us to talk, whether it's on your episode, whether it's just in life over phones, whether it's in real life. We've done a real life meetup too as well.
We have. Which
was great. So I'm very glad to be back. It's been a great another 100 episodes, hasn't it? I think your mission statement at the start, which you read out so eloquently in every episode, has been maintained. But I think you've brought in a greater variety across the following 100 episodes. I think you probably had like this cult mission in your mind to begin with, and you still have that. You're still that guy at heart, and that's why we love you. But of course, then you've allowed, as you said, this year with the patrons, look at what you're doing. You've allowed there to be a bit of you're taking a little bit of your hand off the wheel a little bit, and let the chips fall where they may. So we have had some blockbusters that you've covered, and you and Andy are doing this really interesting silver screen project now where you are covering things you probably never would have covered if it was just down to you. So I think we're getting a real nice mixture now, but it's interesting to see your outlook on these big things. We all love Andy, but we know when you show Andy Tokyo Gore Police what we're going to get. Or I haven't heard it yet, but when you show Andy Frankenhooker, I'm assuming I probably know what I'm going to get from him.
Yeah, but I think you've probably predicting very well what you might get from Andy in regards to that. But then again, you might be surprised.
Yeah, I'm happily surprised. But of course, with you, we don't know. It's when it comes to Goodfellas or it comes to Gladiator and whatever else comes down the road, we don't actually know how you're going to deal with that because it's not really normally in your wheelhouse. So yeah, it's been another good 100 episodes. So I'm glad you keep going, and we want to keep listening.
Absolutely, and that's why I mean I kind of still want to keep it, obviously keep it as again, like you said, on brand, or the
Yeah.
mission statement, keep that the same, but also allow, a little bit more of, because it would be like, early on it was like, I want to do this. Are you up for doing this, or is there something you're up for? And now I've opened it up not only to the guest. I've gone, is there something you want to talk about? Normally I would anyway for like that first one, and say, what do you fancy? Do you want to defend a film? What would you defend if you could? And then they kind of come in whenever they want, or if they're interested, or I go, I'm thinking about doing this. Math was like, I was like, I'm going to do Cocaine Bear one. Are you up for that? And he's like, yeah, sure, wonderful. Those type of guests are my favorite, because I can go, I've got some weird shit. Here it is. Enjoy. But, and then again, I have other guests and other voices. And again, this year I've opened up I've tried to get in as many new voices as I possibly can. Again, people I've known for years or months, or, however long, like Sarah got in this year, and Blake I've got in. And again, people we know and people we're familiar with. But again, in my kind of weird kind of viewpoint as well, and framing them in that. And like, and that I loved that Lars and the Real Girl. It was, again, that wasn't a film I expected to love, but that, blew me away, really, actually. But yeah, there's definitely been a loosening and a changing and pulling back, maybe, of some of the more kind of violent or darker stuff, and maybe just, looking at maybe a little more softer, more interesting, more indie. I still want to keep pushing and looking at more interesting films. Next year, me and Tonya are going to do the banned movies month. We've not decided what we're going to do, but I've floated some suggestions her way, and she's definitely considering. Again, I've given her the reasons. Again, I've tried not to spoil the films for her, because heaven forbid I do that. So I've given her.
You'll be the one that's banned if you do that.
Exactly, for life, from friendship, entirely. I'll no doubt get myself in trouble again sometime soon by my own mistakes, or sometimes I feel like I'm playing like 4-dimensional chess, because if I mention something that someone else is referencing, but then if I say that, but I was like, but they triggered this conversation, and then I'm trying to defend the idea of people being, spoiler free, going spoiler free, while also accidentally spoiling stuff. I'm like, it's a nightmare for me. But yeah, so yeah, it's been really wonderful, and everyone have been so grateful. I'm so grateful for people giving their time, their precious time on this planet to me and my silly endeavor, as entertaining and as fun and as important to me it is. Again, they are giving up valuable time to talk about silly media, be it a comic, be it a film. But yeah, I completely agree with what you said. I'm glad you said that as well, because that has been something that I've gone out of my way to do recently with the choices, to kind of open it up. And again, part of that is hoping to get a few more people with eyes on the podcast, or on the YouTube channel, or on other people's podcasts and YouTube channels as well. And and again, that means kind of more comments, more interaction as well. But it also means that people are like kind of looking forward to it a bit more, instead of like, oh, here we fucking go again. What's this one going to be about? What the fuck is it? Frankenhooker? What? But I think people are open to it, and again, we're getting more and more. I'm getting more and more patrons as well, which is amazing. I didn't even consider on day one that I'd get any, but I got like 4 in the day within 24 hours, and again, continues to grow. And some people have left, some people have come back, some people have left, but again, I'm blessed to have people that care that much they would pay, and even if they don't pay, that they still listen and take the time to come with me on my weird and wacky journeys.
Weird and wacky is right, but it's just a concept and a format, and you're gregarious and outgoing, and we all like listening to what you've got to say. So I can't see it. I don't see an endpoint. I'm sure you don't.
No.
But I think those of us that have been there from day one, or those of us that will find you today, I think everyone comes for the same reason, because we just really enjoy, whether it's weird and wacky, or when it's generally weird and wacky. But you've always got something to say that perhaps we hadn't thought about, or there's a fresh take on it, or you consider things. Tony and I do our modern lens with the TV shows that we watch, but I think you managed to do that as well as really consider the conceptual birth of the thing that you were talking about, be it a comic or a movie or whatever you're choosing to delve into. Like, you really wanted to consider why this product was made, like what they were trying to say. And I think most people, particularly with the weird and wacky stuff, just dismiss that. And they think, oh, Demons and Demons 2, they're just a load of silly fun. But you really think about like why that's there and what the director might be trying to say, or like what this part might mean, or why it's important to the industry at this point. And you endeavor to, and we all know that those of us that listen to you, the amount of research you go into, the amount of movies that you watch in order to cover a topic, the depth you delve into to understand the movies that you've picked once you've chosen out of the 50 you've watched for the werewolf month.
Yeah.
And then you've picked 5. So then you learn about all those 5 in as much depth as possible and watch every YouTube video that's available. You do the work so we don't have to, essentially, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Exactly. And again, I think the joy for me as well is, again, like you said, what is like the historical context. Yeah, we've got to have the 2024 lens, and again, we need to look back and consider the problematic elements, but also where was the world, what were they doing, what was their what was the stuff that was going on right then.
Mhm.
The Billy Joel song, "We Didn't Start the Fire," it's all about those kind of historical events. It's the world keeps turning and keeps burning. But it's important to look back and to appreciate the history, be it cultural reasons, filmmaking, business reasons. I love all that. I think that's wonderful and vastly interesting. And again, when you're looking at certain films, which we're going to discuss, I'm sure that plays a massive role in that. And sometimes those films turn out poorly because of those things, those reasons, those outside factors, the money, the producers, the writers, whatever. The outside world, like again with the banned films, it's the audience. Why are people offended by that? Why have they called for that to not be released or not be seen by people? What power does that have? But yeah, no, I again very much appreciate you saying that and noticing that. I think is wonderful, because I don't know if a lot of people would notice those kind of lengths and the kind of stuff I'm doing, and again the amount of time and research I'm putting in to do that. Again, luckily, I don't have a partner. I don't have kids. So you guys get all this extra time put towards this. This is my baby. I described it the other day with my therapist. I was like, this is kind of my baby, and I want to protect it and nourish it and make it grow as best as I can. I spend a lot of time, hours and hours and hours editing. However long the podcast is, I probably spent double that time editing. And, typing up the show notes. There's a lot of time and effort goes into those show notes, and I bet a lot of people don't bloody read them either. So,
and it's a lot of bloody more effort than I go to. I will put that out there. No
exactly. I'm not.
How quickly can I do this?
Yeah.
Damn.
Cool. Well, look at all the spelling errors.
Yeah.
I put I put the Frankenhooker episode out, and I was like, oh yeah, I've spelt that wrong. Shit. I'm gonna have to go back and edit it. I'm no Mike Burton. I'll be honest. I'll hold my hands up. I'm no Mike Burton, but I was inspired by him to be a bit more, consistent and a bit more like put a bit more effort into those show notes. And I think when people do read them and appreciate them, and again, it's a lot of the stuff that I put in the social media posts. And again, oh god, don't get me started on the fucking social media and all that shit and stories and TikToks, and I spend too much time on that already, which I'm sure we all do. But again, there is a goal in mind. It's not just like, hey, here's a selfie of me. But I guess there's goals for creating selfies as well. Don't get me wrong. But yeah, it's not my bag. That kind of promotion is not my bag. But yeah, there's a lot of time and money and effort. These microphones are not cheap. The MacBook is not cheap. The camera is not cheap, even though it's not fucking working. Even though I think that was about 150 fucking quid. Thanks, that's gone. But again, it is working, but it's glitching every now and again. And I think you'll notice that on a few the Frankenhooker, you'll definitely see a glitch or two on that video. So go and check that out for amazing things that I didn't want to include but had to within there. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff that goes on, and and I've got my own life, I've got my own struggles and problems and things, and I've got a full-time job as well. I'm doing all of this and still have a full-time job on top of that, and and I agree to be on too many podcasts and to do too many podcasts at the moment. So and that's why I'm kind of trying to pull back a little bit, but not too much. You'll still get all the good stuff, don't worry. People on Patreon and elsewhere, if you're listening for free as well. I love you guys as well. Please keep listening, don't go away. Please don't leave me. But yeah, it does fulfill me, and it's a blessing really that I've, if anything, it's made me spend more time with friends that are far away or that I've never met in person, like Tonya or Tony, who I may never meet in person, but I've met, and those relationships are so powerful and strong to me now, those friendships. And who knew that I would meet you, a stranger off the internet, and not only that, I would let you in my flat where you could murder me,
vice versa.
And you could be, yeah, exactly. True. That's a fair point. You took that risk as well. You were like, oh yes, all the dead bodies are piling up. It makes so much sense now. This is all AI. This is all an illusion. This background. This isn't real. None of this is real. But yes, no. And I it's incredible that it's come so far, and that people are still listening and still caring and commenting and paying attention to it. But yeah, I think the relationships I've made, being part of Comics in Motion and all the other YouTube channels like the Attention Seeking Geek, Andy, I've managed to inspire others to go on and do some wonderful work like Andy, or again, start again, or consider maybe doing their own thing, or spinning maybe an idea or something, conversations that we've had. And again, you went on and did your own stuff with Tony, and again, Comics in Motion. Ria's gone on and done her stuff. Again, I'm not saying I'm responsible directly for inspiring people to do that, because that's still their own work. It's still their own thing. But if I've helped even a little bit, or supported them in some way, or helped promote them in some way, that's a blessing as well. That's like my calling, I think, is to assist people where I can and when I can. If it's possible, even in the tiniest way, and and give people voices where they've, if I can, where I can, with what I can. Again, not going too far outside of what the show is and what it's about. We have the fun, we have the serious, we have the crazy, but we also can bring it down. But it's never gets too much. There's never too much of both. There's never too much of the silly, but there's never too much of the serious as well. I think there's a fairly decent balance, and again, I want it to be, for the most part, I want it to feel like two friends are chatting at the bare minimum, two or three, if at most. Because I want it to be informative, I want it to be fun, I want it to be entertaining, and I want everybody to have a good time. And that's basically what I've tried to do and think about. I'll make silly jokes and stuff and references to things, and that's what it's all about. But I'm blessed to be involved in this community. This is the best community I've ever been a part of, the most positive, the most supportive. There is no like backstabbing or backbaiting or bitching, really. Like, everyone is so nice, and everyone listens. Everyone listens. Nobody's going to listen to every podcast that we all put out ever, which is fine. It's impossible. I bet I try not to even listen to mine. I've got to edit them. I'm like, oh God, I have to edit this. Fuck, and but the ones I do listen to, I love and I appreciate them. And again, certain ones will catch my interest more so than others. But again, I'm here to promote, support, retweet, reshare. Because it's all good stuff. It's all fun, and again, I learn things that I never would have from the relationships I've made and from these podcasts that I've been linked to. So it's completely a blessing in every form or function this podcast has been. No matter what's been going on in my life, this has been a kind of consistent positive, no matter where I am or who I'm with or what's going on in my life. I know I've got this. This is my kind of This is my rock.
Mm.
For lack
And it
of
has
a
been
better word.
consistent, isn't it? I don't think you've ever missed a
Deadline.
date that your deadline that you've aimed for, have you? So yeah,
I,
you've been consistent ever since episode 1, haven't you?
I've tried. I've tried. I did do the first year I did it weekly, and
Mhm.
I had the worst. I was doing it. I was recording it on an iPad, and it was like a Japanese app. I was editing it through, and I remember I recorded a whole Suspiria episode, and it just got. And I let the iPad close, like it went to sleep. And then when I opened it up again, it was like, no, that's gone. That's all gone. That hour and a half is gone. Forget it. Doesn't exist anymore. And I was like, and that really depressed me, and it put me off podcasting for a little while. But then I bought this little cheap pink laptop because I imagine it was cheap because it was pink. And then my friend was like, "How have you been doing anything on this pink laptop? It's got no memory. It's got nothing on it." And I was like, "I don't know." And then I had to buy more stuff, of course. But yeah, there's been some trials and tribulations. But yeah, I've tried to stay as consistent as possible. Again, people drop out, or guests can't do a certain evening or day, and I'll try and find a way to rework it, or move someone forward, or do something on my own, or maybe use a Patreon video or a podcast or something. But yeah, I try my best to be as consistent as possible. And I even notice some of the weeks that I don't do a podcast, people are still, the stats will jump up because they kind of, even though there's not one that week and there shouldn't be one that week, people are still going, oh yeah, I better listen. But yes, anyway, that's enough about me and patting my own back, because nobody wants to hear that fucking shit. But Jack, we are here to list our top 5 best and worst films covered on the podcast. So as you're the biggest fan, I thought that it would be better for you to do the best films that I've covered. I don't think I know what any of your choices are, per se.
You do not?
So this will be interesting. I like the surprise. Jack knows all of my picks because I've revealed them. But this
Well,
will
I
be
asked, didn't I? I wanted to know
you wanted
to make sure I could
True.
contribute to the conversation, because
Exactly.
I've done my best, and as you know, I appreciate you. I think Paul maybe is overtaking me now. I'll be honest, Paul Mellor is an amazing supporter of yours.
True. Yeah, he's if there's a number 2 fan, I'd say it's Paul. If
100%.
If there's a competitor, I'd probably say Paul, you, and Derek are up there. I think for big fans. But don't get me wrong, everybody is my biggest fan. I'm pointing to all you listener, you I'm talking to now, right now, the one listening right now. You're my biggest fan, and I appreciate you. But again, people that are messaging me, talking about it, retweeting me, the people that do that most definitely are you 3, I'd say, out of the bunch. Really, really consistent fans. So, but yes, so I'm really interested. Again, you're the guest, so I want you to go first. So, I gave you a master list because I decided I didn't want anything about events on there. I didn't want anything that is kind of a shared podcast, so Disney discussions, or sharing the silver screen. Obviously, there's no comics because we're talking about films. I think there's a few other kind of stipulations I made as well, but I sent you a master list, and so I cut out certain ones, so it wasn't entirely all 200 episodes because some of them aren't really even film related necessarily. So, but yeah, I'm really interested to hear what is the first installment in your top 5 films covered on this podcast.
So I gave myself a couple of rules. So I went through your master list first, and that was amazing. So of the list you sent me, and then obviously you and I had a couple of discussions, and so I could plug all the gaps. So I reckon you've covered 227 movies.
Wow, I didn't even know that.
So that's including all the top 5s,
Yeah.
I've counted all those up. So of course, sometimes there's 10 of those because you've got a guest on, obviously. And of those, I reckon I've seen 138 of them. So that's all right.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
So I feel like I've kept a pace pretty well. Obviously, some of those I would have seen before. Some of those I've watched exclusively because I know you're covering them. And what I've decided to do is not include any films which I had already seen, number one, but also particularly because, something like Hard Boiled. You've covered Hard Boiled. Well, no, Hard Boiled is one of my 20 favorite films of all time.
Yeah.
It is one of the best action movies of all time. So it's kind of redundant to mention that because we all know how good Hard Boiled is. We all know how good Rear Window is that you and I spoke about.
Of course.
And Goodfellas is, and Halloween is. And so, why talk about those today? Because I wanted to fit in with your mission statement, fit in with your intro, fit in with what the podcast is about. So that they were the kind of parameters I gave myself, which did narrow the field a little bit. I'm a heavy letterbox user, so that's
You're
very useful. I log
you're
everything on there.
you're
So
you're a completionist. So
I am, yeah.
I gave you a massive task, really.
So yeah, I'm afraid I did not have time between the list and now to watch all of them, but
No, it's fine.
that's why I wanted your list, wasn't it? To make sure I'd
Yes.
seen all the ones that I hadn't got around to that you were going to talk about.
Do you really want to watch the ones that are on my list? Do you really?
Well, yes, I do because that's what I do, because I'm a completionist and because I'm here to support you and support the show. So my first entry on my top 5 best films, not including anything that's already a classic in the world, in the eyes of the world, I have gone for, and I think this would probably make you quite happy, John Wright's 2012 Grabbers.
Yes. You know what? I did not expect this one, but I love it. Yes. Please
I
tell.
had never heard of this film. Unsurprisingly, I don't know who had, other than you, of course, the wonderful you. And it's basically a modern day Tremors, is how I think of it. And I fucking love Tremors. I loved Tremors when I was younger. I watched it over and over and over and over. And Rhea will be sitting here nodding, listening to this episode, going, "Yes, I know. So did I. It's so good." I rewatched Tremors last Halloween, I think, because I thought I haven't seen this for ages, or last October, and it is still as good as I remember. Like, it hasn't aged poorly; it's still just as good. Grabbers, though, Grabbers is like the drunk Irish version of Tremors. It's wonderful. So it's set on like a little commune, isn't it? Like a little island. I've got the name of it here. Erin Island. It's set on, which is Erin Island off the coast of Ireland, and you get a new cop, don't you? Joining the force. She comes in just at the worst time, as you always do in these kind of stories, and then like wacky kind of like monster filled fun ensues. But I just think it's the film you expect it to be. It's schlocky, it's silly. It's also made by somebody who really knows how to make films, and it's acted by people who are really good at playing those characters. So when I look back at my Letterboxd review, I was calling out all the elements of it. I just thought, like, this is so elevated, and I'm not a massive fan of that word. I'm saying it. I'm not a fan of when people say it's elevated horror. Like, that's silly.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah,
But the way I'm trying to use it is that it's elevated. My expectations were it's elevated way above what I thought it was going to be. It looked like a really professionally made horror movie. The cinematography was excellent. The score was superb. The creature design, for what the budget they had and what they could produce, was fantastic and creative and scary and did everything it needed to do. And then it still managed to hit all those wonderful, like, postmodern movie reference beats that you kind of want from this kind of movie nowadays. So when I think of it, it just makes me feel happy. So Grabbers has to be on my list.
Excellent choice. I think that is very fitting, like you said, fitting in with the show itself and what it kind of represents. Yeah, it was something I'd seen it before, years before, and I was at a convention. I think it was Liverpool Comic Con. I think I went. Me and Dan Burgess, very very honored guest on the show. We went and I think there was like a really cheap, like dirt cheap, like DVD and Blu-ray sales. I think they were from a specific shop, but they'd come in and to sell. And I was like looking through them, and I was like, let's see what there is. And Grabbers spoke to me again. I was like, I've seen this. I really loved it, and I've told people how much I love it. And I was like, I need to own this. I need to own this. So I just was like, I'll get it. And I was like, and then I was looking for something to do, and I was like, let's do Grabbers. And I threw that out there, and I think it was one of the ones where even people that don't really listen to the show were interested. Like, there was Adam at work who's our kind of quality assurance officer on our calls and things. He basically said. He said, "Oh, what are you doing this week?" And I was like, "I'm doing Grabbers. It's about aliens that drink your blood, but the only way you can beat them is by being drunk yourself. Your blood has to have alcohol in it because that's what kills them." And he went, "Right, sold. Is it on anywhere?" I was like, "Luckily, it's available on YouTube. Go fill your boots." And he came back. I don't think he listened to the podcast, but he did go, "My wife loved this. I love this. Brilliant." Derek again came back, I think the same day or a few days later, was like, "Yeah, I love it as well. Brilliant podcast." And again, it's one of the puny pods. It's just me by myself, just talking about it. but it has a lot of the elements you would like from like an 80s monster movie. It's very Ghostbusters. Like you said, Tremors is there. There's a lot of Shaun the Dead in there as well.
Yeah.
When they do the lock-in, there's some wonderful, wonderful elements. And again, it's somewhere different. It's culturally, it's not like the kind of standard kind of, it's not an American, they're in the forest and they're being stalked by something. And again, the CGI is fantastic as well. Like in a low budget, Irish horror film, the CGI is better than, you can't hide, Henry Cavill's mustache, but these things look incredible, and they are primarily CGI, if I remember. I think there might have been some puppets potentially involved as some practical effects. But yeah, it has a lot of humor to it. There's a lot of heart there as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm in complete agreement with you. I think it's a fun film. If you haven't seen it already, again, I think it probably is still available on YouTube. If not, go and seek it out. It is an absolute just blast. It's a hell of a time. But yeah, I agree with everything you said. There's a Spielbergian element to it. There's like a Joe Dante feel as well, like Gremlins is a little bit in there. There's a lot of influences going in, but again, it's not. What's good is it has all these influences, but it doesn't feel like a rip-off or it's not a pastiche or it's made a spoof or anything. It is very much its own thing, while drawing inspiration from all over the shop. And it works on every level, like you were saying. It is an absolute banger, and again, very fitting in line with this channel and with the podcast and with what we're kind of looking at. But yeah, wonderful choice.
I'm glad you approve. I know, it's a full circle backpack here. You recommended it, I liked it, now I recommend it, and you like it, and we'll just keep patting backs here.
Just circle, jerk, circle. That's what it'll be.
I went for the backpack, but all right.
You know whose channel it is. You know whose podcast it is. You know what this is all about. But yes, no, absolutely. Well, speaking of Spielberg, you and I did a podcast, and it was our very first Wrong Direction. Now, Wrong Direction is about the lesser known or lesser revered films of big name directors. So there is another one from that within my top 5. So I'm kind of unfortunately that format kind of leads us to look at lesser quality films potentially. I'm not saying they're all bad or they're all the worst things ever made, but that's the idea of it. Like, why did they take this direction? Why did they go down this road, to, mediocrity or whatever you want to call it? Why did this one not do so well? Why was it so poorly received by critics and audiences? That's the point. So that's why some of these choices fall into that format. After a big run of some of his best, Raiders, Close Encounters.
I watched the trailer again in preparation. Sorry to interrupt, but just as you mentioned, I watched the trailer again in preparation for tonight, and it says in the trailer, like, from the director of Jaws and Close Encounters. And you think, oh, fuck, imagine being on that run and then putting this utter turd out.
Jack already knows what it is. We are talking about 1941, which again, I think on Twitter recently, this is weird because I was looking through the master list and I almost missed this one. For some reason, I almost missed it. I was like, how could I fucking forget this? And again, mine are in no particular order, but this was not good on any level.
No.
And I think recently there was somebody was saying something about Spielberg, or there was a couple of moments in the last like 2 or 3 weeks where someone has referenced Spielberg or his run of films, or they've talked about something else, and I keep referencing 1941. And somebody commented to us and was like, "Oh, it's not that bad," and I was like, "Did you watch it? Have you seen it? Does it make you laugh?" I was kind of in shock and awe that, everyone's entitled to opinion, especially, this show is all about, I love shit nobody else likes, it's part and parcel and go ahead, but overwhelmingly terrible. Like, we were both in complete agreement that it's not funny, it's too long, We've got some of the best actors of any generation in that film. And these overly long gags, these telegraphed gags that are telegraphed like 30 minutes before the punchline, it feels. And you're like, fucking hell, get to it. And it's just dreadful. Like Eddie Deason, you mentioned on the podcast as well, being one of the main culprits of why you hated the film. I agree. Again, not a good bit of casting. Even Dan Aykroyd, you know, he's acting like he's a bug. He's putting satsumas in a lady's tights and putting it over his head. Like, what is this? Like, and you know, and like John Belushi as well, like dicking about in a plane, not really doing anything of comedic value or, you know, characters. And again, there's a lot of problematic stuff. Again, we talked about it on the podcast, you know, the 2024 lens and what it is, you know, as of now. But then even then, back then I was like, oof, John Candy in blackface, not good. Not the way I want to remember John Candy. You know, there's all this kind of weird patriarchal sex stuff where they have to go out and again, those things might not necessarily ruin a movie for me, but it certainly doesn't help when the movie is shit and it's the only thing I'm remembering. And like gags where like Treat Williams just doesn't like eggs. And again, we have some of the we've got John Milius as a producer, you've got Spielberg directing, you've got God, what's his name, who wrote it, the Back to the Future boys. Zemeckis and Gold something. Can't remember his name. Something Gold. Like, I want to say Bobcat Goldthwait, but that's definitely not it.
Bob Gale.
Zemeckis and Gale. That's right. I don't know where Gold came from, but Gale. But yeah, like again, you've got all of the pieces are there to make a wonderful, you know, epic comedy of epic proportions. But it misses the mark, you know, and you know, there's a big gun that misses the mark as well in the whole film, and that's, you know, a wonderful metaphor for this film, you know, and they all agreed that this was the film they wanted to make. This is the film, and they're still happy with it now, but it is dreadful. It's an abomination. And again, I'm very forgiving when it comes to these films, you know, for all their holes, there is something I like, you know. I'm Necromantic. I recommend it because I kind of sort of like it, or kind of sort of respect the ideas behind it and what they're trying to say. But again, I know what it is, and I know that it's not good. But there's something to it. This, I just couldn't find any. Unfortunately, and I really tried. Like in the podcast, I'm like, oh, this could have been good, or there's an idea there, or I love those actors, I like them being put together. But I'm really fucking struggling. And you're right. You're the angry Andy to me. In that point, but you were right. You're 100% on single thing you said. And again, as much as I'm like, I want to find the positives, but for this one, absolutely not.
If I had to pick a worst film that you've covered, I'd be picking this one too. And it just happens to be that we covered it on an episode, and we did it into death, didn't we? But
oh yeah,
and I completely agree with you too. You know, this is something we're both on the same page about. People like what they like, and that's absolutely fine. If people want to like 1941, of course, please like 1941. But it is just, for me, objectively bad on every level. It's, as you said, poorly written, poorly directed, poorly acted. You know, just echo what you said. The pool of talent behind this that just was totally misused and wasted. And what the fuck were they doing? I find spoof and I find fast quite difficult sometimes. It's not always my genre. This is obviously looking back to Doctor Strangelove. This wants to be that. And then we can look forwards to, I don't know, maybe Tropic Thunder, which itself, you know, is not without its issues, but
yeah, sure.
but is pretty funny in parts, I would say. I remember laughing when I was watching that. And it's knowingly playing with some of the issues that 1941 did not see that was right in front of it that was a problem. Do you know what I mean? Robert Downey Jr. in blackface in Tropic Thunder is a deliberate joke.
Yes, yeah.
John Candy in blackface in 1941 is not. It doesn't get that. That's not okay. So yeah, there's just nothing I can say positive about it. And then, as you mentioned, Eddie Deason. Oh my god, and I'm sure I spoke about the time, so I don't want to repeat myself from those that have had the episode. But
Sure.
there is a film I've seen that is worse than 1941. It is called Ski Patrol. I made the VHS boys watch it because why wouldn't I? And there's a character in that called Suicide who is genuinely the worst thing I've ever seen in anything. Film, TV, comics, books. It's the worst character and performance and realization ever. Eddie Deason, he's got like he's like a ventriloquist, isn't he?
Yeah, he's got a dummy.
This.
Yeah, and the dummy is in the credits as well. They listed the credits
as dummy, and then the dummy looks like Steven Spielberg, and of course it does. Yeah. It's Eddie Deason is not far off Suicide to me in this movie. He's like that close to being the worst thing I've ever seen.
How far from Suicide were you after watching the film?
Yeah, pretty far to be fair, thankfully. But if you ask me to watch it again, there's a different discussion. I would not.
Yeah, and if you remember, Jack, I watched the extended version.
Yes, I did.
I watched the director's cut. So again, I'm doing this for you guys. I did it for you guys because I thought there must be something I'm missing out. And I remember us talking about it, and you were like, I was like, I don't even know what was cut out of it. It just feels the same, but worse. But yeah, I think. And there was, I remember there was no central character because all the there's such great wealth of stars in it. Go and look at the cast list. You can't move for stars in that film, but again, there's no central character. There's a lot of mugging. Like I'm being funny. I'm a serious actor, and I'm being the crazy guy. Look at me being silly. Yeah, just fucking horrendous. It's the only thing I can say about it. Just bad timing, telegraphing jokes, lots of chaos as well. Like no order to the chaos. It was, Spielberg was like, "Oh, it was too loud." I was like, "What the fuck do you mean it was too loud?" No, it just was long and unfunny. Dreadful stuff. But they made the film they wanted to make. They got the film that I'm sure they have on their shelves in HD, Blu-ray, 4K. And they'll hold it as one of their favorite things they've ever made, I'm sure. And that's up to them, but it's certainly not one of the favorite things I've ever had to watch.
Nah.
Anyway, let's talk about something good, Jack.
Let's talk about something else that we covered then, shall we?
Oh, okay. Good. Please.
Which I suppose feels like a bit of a cheat, but I hadn't seen it before, and they were my parameters here, weren't they? So my next pick is by Martin Scorsese. It's from 1985. We watched it as a comparison.
We did.
With Into the Night.
Into the Night, yeah.
But it's not that movie. It is After Hours, which totally blew me away when I saw it and has stayed with me. And I think a film that I will watch a lot more now that I know it exists. And, Scorsese is not a small name. Speaking of, Spielberg, Scorsese, it's just this hidden little gem on his CV. And I would argue is up there probably as good as the majority of the other stuff that he's made. And it's passed people by. And, this is an interesting film for us to be talking about now because 1941 was kind of skits and little moments and outlandish humor and people in kind of almost to caricature levels of acting. And you could label all of that at After Hours as well, but it all works there. It's all meant to be this nightmarish scenario that Griffin Dunn's character is going through. And the escalation of events that he experiences, the cadre of crazy characters that he meets on his way of just trying to desperately just wants to get home. What was he, 50 cents short or something of getting home, getting the train home. All of that works to create this wonderful kind of tapestry of one man's descent, one man's kind of night in hell. And then you get this wonderful ending where you can't quite piece together what's happened, but it leaves you satisfied because that's the only way it could have ended. I think it's a wonderful movie.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was one of the better ones. I think you might have said on the podcast, you were like, I'm having a great time. I'm having a great run because all the films you're bringing to me are absolutely excellent. And I was like, yes. Because I did have a time where I think not long after Necromantic, where it was like Dan does shit films. Dan is the shit man. He brings all the garbage and the trash for us to watch. Isn't it funny? And I'm like, yeah, I do that, but I also do actual good things. I know, my friend Nathan was like, I don't think you know what good is anymore. I think your viewpoint on the world has been poisoned. You can't watch new films and appreciate them, And I was like, no, I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm doing. I know what the show is. I know what the podcast is. So I was kind of like, right, let's pull that back just a little bit and just show that I do know what quality films are and ones I discover, and ones a lot of the stuff, most of the stuff I bring to the table, I have not seen as well.
Mhm.
Like I do not, it's very rare that I'll go, oh, I want to do that, that I have seen. I'm looking for things. I go digging for the buried treasure. And After Hours had been talked about before, and I'd seen it, and it sounded interesting. It sounded unique, but yeah, like, and again, we looked at Into the Night, which was very similar. Not to give away that episode, but After Hours wins. If you haven't listened, but it is a good discussion nevertheless. And I think it was, and it kind of knocked Into the Night out of the water because it was so strong. There's a lot of black humor to it, where the kind of the dark humor in 1941 just doesn't work on any level. It's not funny. There's no frame of reference. And again, I'm a big black humor fan, black comedy fan, and that's exactly what this is. But again, it's kind of an Alice in Wonderland, going down the rabbit hole, or this, or I think they reference Wizard of Oz a lot in it. So I think there's an element of that.
Alice in Wonderland, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so, something like that. And there's all these kind of weird and wacky and unusual characters, and I think it's relatable yet not at the same time. And it's interesting to see the kind of, what people are looking for, what's their drive. He's in this boring, mundane job, a lot of us are, which is quite relatable. And then he's trying to, meet a beautiful woman, but then it goes down a dark path, and he's being quite cruel, and he's not that nice a guy. And yeah, it says a lot of stuff. I can't verbalize the amount of feelings and roller coaster, and it is something I will revisit 100%. I think a 4K came out recently of it. I think it was on the Criterion collection as well, which is a high bar to be on there. But also they have some very odd choices as well on there as well. But yeah, it's I think it's one of the stronger films I've done recently, and I'm glad you were there to kind of express your feelings on it, because I think arguably you expressed your feelings better than I could on it, being who you are, being what you do. I think you were the right person to have for that particular podcast as well.
Well, I was very grateful to be there. Just, I could come back on probably, and we could do another whole episode on it, and we could delve into, like, there's so many things, different things you could talk about. You could talk about the point that it's at Scorsese's career, and the fact, this was his kind of redemption. So he was Griffin Dunne in the movie. That is like a whole essay by itself.
I mean, After Hours could have been a wrong direction.
Yeah, 100%, absolutely.
Could have easily been a wrong direction, but because I think it was Edgar Wright that kind of pointed me towards the two films. I was like, okay, because I think he was doing double bills for Lockdown on Twitter or something, and I was like, oh, those sound interesting. I'll put that in the back pocket for comparison later on, a Clone Wars. But yeah, it easily could have been one we did, but we've not. We've not done Martin Scorsese yet. Whoever I do that with, or whatever film we pick, can't do After Hours now, so I'm gonna have to find something else. But I'm sure there's a few that you could pick. But yeah, absolutely. But again, that would have been a positive, as opposed to like Spielberg, we would have come out of that one going, no, the wrong direction was all the people that didn't go to see it, the marketing, the money behind it, the producers. The film itself is wonderful and bizarre and fun and dark and twisted. It's and again, it was like night and day. It was quite interesting because, again, Into the Night was LA, and it was a representation of LA and what LA is, and the fake of it, and the facade of LA. But then like this New York one was dark and gritty and grimy and horrible and full of people that were dangerous, which I think is more in my, because it didn't quite work in Into the Night. I can see what they were going for and what Landis was going for, but this, again, unlike 1941, this fires on all cylinders at all points. And again, good central performance, great character actors, filled with character actors. Wonderful. Just again, it blew me away as well. Like, I didn't expect it to like it quite as much, like miles ahead of Into the Night. But yeah, another excellent choice, Jack.
And I think I watched it quite close to Vampire's Kiss because either you or Andy or Sonny had been talking, maybe you and Andy have been talking about that.
Mm.
And it was an interesting dynamic, these two kind of anti-yuppie movies coming out at that time. They clearly had a lot to say. So that was perfect timing too. So if anyone hasn't seen it yet, it's definitely one they should seek out.
Yeah, so I saw someone on Twitter, they were compiling a list of like horrible nights or something, or happens in one night, and they were like, oh, they've got After Hours as like number one with a bullet, and they were like, I need more, tell me more. And I suggested Into the Night because I was like, oh, well, you've got After Hours, so Into the Night's the next logical step in that. But yeah, wonderful choice. Again, that's like top tier for me. One of the best films, without a doubt, that has been covered on the podcast. Okay, so next up,
Bring us back down.
Bring us back down. Oh god. Oh, you ready? It's another wrong direction. So I think I might have only done two. So this is something that is happening a lot. Clearly, it is My Soul to Take. So this is Wes Craven's He's going back to writing. He's creating his own film. He's got funded by this up and coming production company, and he wants to make a slasher. And again, he had a lot of again, happens to him all the time. They make a film, he makes a film, and everyone goes, no, make it like Nightmare on Elm Street, make it like Scream, make it like this, make it like that. And he's like, no, I don't kind of want to do that, And they're like, well, it won't sell, so you better put in a dream sequence, you better put in this and that, and you better have a guy with a deep voice who cuts people up, and they're gonna have multiple personalities. The premise of this film is that a killer dies, he has multiple personalities, but it's not multiple personalities, it's multiple souls. And they go and all enter all of these children that are born coincidentally on the same night. And then they
all premature births, aren't they? Sorry, yeah.
It causes all of them the psychic release or damage or effect of him being killed releases them. But then
now that is a really interesting idea.
Exactly, and this is what I said in the podcast.
Where does it go?
The premise is dynamite, and I think that's what Wes Craven does best. The premise is the best thing about it. I think after that, everything gets watered down and fucked up and ruined, and for whatever reason. But unfortunately, that's what happened with My Soul to Take yet again for him. And I always feel bad for him because it always seems to happen to him, as of all people. And I don't know if he's more of a writer and he doesn't have the gusto or like bravado that maybe a director would need, or I'm not sure. But I love his work, and this is not a slight against him, but it's not a good film on any stretch. The editing is poor, the special effects. The writing feels like it's dated and trying to be hip and funky when it's not. There's some interesting designs for costumes and the villains of the piece, and it is full of amazing actors. You've got Danai Gurira in there. Is it Gurira?
Yeah.
I
know you mean.
Yeah,
Michonne from Walking Dead, and Okoye from
Okoye,
Black Panther. Yeah.
I'm butchering her name, so I do apologize. But yeah, her. You've got Frank Grillo in there. You've got you've got some young and up and coming actors. There's some really creative and interesting moment. There's a mimicry scene going on. There's this kind of bird of prey angle, bird of death angle going on as well. But again, there's like everyone's a red herring, and it's the worst. Imagine the worst slasher film you could possibly make, and it's probably this. It's got a terrible soundtrack, very like new metal soundtrack going on. It's not good in any way. Like me and Dan just destroy it basically on every possible way. It's not a good film. Like you're watching it and you're just like, I'd rather watch Nightmare on Elm Street. I'd rather watch Scream. I'd rather watch The Hills Have Eyes. I'd rather watch The People Under the Stairs. Yeah, I was literally going through his entire, filmography and going, anything but this. Shocker, anything but this. Like any film that he's made, I was like, maybe not Deadly Blessing or something like that, but it's not feasibly a good film in any way. And there was a lot of people that have defended it and said, no, you don't understand it. You don't understand it, man. And it's edited so choppily. And I think that's the studio. It was post-converted into 3D for no reason. And all these interviews with him, and I feature an interview in there, And he's like, "Oh, it's scarier than Scream and Nightmare on Elm Street." I'm like, "Stop lying, Wes. I know you don't believe that for a second." There was some really poorly conceived like publicity stunts. They were going to fake a stabbing to promote the film, and I was just like, "What is any of this?" Like again, and they had obviously they had a screening and everybody hated it, so they had to chop it up and edit it. And again, me and Dan talk about these sequences, like the opening sequences just doesn't feel right. It just seems to be too full on, and I feel like that is originally segmented. We still don't know what the original ending to the film was. It was cut to pieces and removed, so we'll never know what order the film should have been in, what should have been in it, what shouldn't have been in it, and all we have is this desiccated corpse of a film, unfortunately, which is one of his final films. Luckily, he did Scream 4 after this. He didn't end his career with that film, luckily, but still, it's horrific. I don't know if you got time to watch this one or managed to find it at all, or you did.
I did. So you and I were talking about like trying to source it, weren't we? And we both found the same link on Daily Motion. So I have watched it there. It isn't one I had seen before, but I'm glad I did. I don't think I hate it as much as you.
No,
but there's nothing to recommend. It's a poor patchwork. It's a Frankenstein of other movies, of better movies, particularly of his own, as you said. Like it's so heavily like wants to be the new Scream,
yeah,
but with, as you said, like a Freddy Krueger killer. But the high school kids, I agree with you. They feel like they should be in a John Hughes movie, and it's 2010. Like, what the fuck's going on? Like, we don't have these. We don't have the jock and the nerd and we don't have these caricatures anymore. We don't have these kind of single characterized people. And you're right. They feel like they're from a John Hughes movie, and lots of those are really good. Some of them haven't aged very well, but they talk like, as you said, like 2010 teens. So again, that doesn't make any sense. It's a shame. I feel like we said it. There's a good concept there. I feel like there's a good movie in amongst the bad we get. It shouldn't have been a slasher, which is what it turned into.
yeah.
It should have been something supernatural. It should have been Fallen is a great movie. I've not seen it for a long time. But that's Denzel Washington and John Goodman, I think.
It's a body hopping demon, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah. And they play with that concept, and that works really well in that movie. It's a thriller rather than a horror, but it works really well. It's clever, it's smart, it sticks with the concept. This could have been a horror version of that. And Craven is the right person to make that movie. It's a shame. It's a shame they didn't have the faith in him in the studio. It sounds like once again
didn't allow him to do what he's supposed to do, what he does best.
Yeah.
Which is it's a real shame. And just all the characters, like you said, the stereotype, like you said, the jock, and that's it. There's no depth to any of them. And like I think Dan called one of them the God Botherer, which made me laugh.
Sure. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
she's the religious. She's the religious one. She's this, and then it's just like it's over explained and under explained at the same time. All of these things, they want to have their cake and eat it the whole film. They want to believe that the killer is still out there, but then how do the souls go into the babies if he's not dead? And then, but then they want it to be the souls thing, but then they don't. And then the even the sister reveal that he's been bullied by this girl, and it's revealed to be his own sister. Is like they're like. Like shock, like it's like a big twist in the film, and I was like, "Why is this?"
That whole plot line's really weird. It's like the fan club or something, isn't it? Like she's running the school and deciding who goes out with who, and it's very odd. It's
bizarre. And I'm not against like a female bully or villain like running the school. Like that's quite an interesting idea. But the way they handle it, and they're making up their own I don't know, like languages and not languages, but like I'm blanking on the phrase, but kind of like unique swear words or unique phrases.
Yeah. It wants to be Buffy. It wants to be Kevin Williams. Yes. It wants to absolutely. It wants its own kind of lexicon. Its own little
lexicon. Yeah. That kind of this is all right, and they're inventing phrases and terms that I'm pretty sure 2010 kids wouldn't have used. And I was in uni, so I wasn't like I was coming just out of college into uni, so I wasn't like old. So even I was kind of sort of that kind of age anyway, and I wouldn't have used any of the terms they use in this film. They even there's a stupid moment where they get the blind kid who's supposed to have one of the souls up a roof, up a ladder into a building. He has then been stabbed, and he decides to hide in the wardrobe, and then they try and pin the murder on him. And I was like, I'm out. I'm fucking out.
I tell you what, I didn't realize for ages that he was blind. It was only when the boys hide the phone in the toilet, and I was like, "What is this? Is this a skit that he's blind?" I hadn't got it. This is like half an hour into the movie or something. Yeah, some of the sequences as well are terrible. Like the jock and the cheerleader. He's like asking her for a blowjob, and she's like saying no, and then she goes, "Oh, okay then." And then they go into the woods, and then she runs away. Like, what's she running away from? I don't get it. And then he's chasing her as if he's like a rapist, like a date rapist or something. And then they both just get killed really offhand and really uninteresting. Like some of the sequences are so poorly put together. It's an odd movie. I think it's probably one that people. I wouldn't 1941. I would say don't watch it. There's nothing to recommend there. I think this is an oddity. It's a curio that probably is worth checking out because
there are
Craven's filmography and to see where it fits and to see. I guess what you're looking at here is you're too old for this shit. Stop being a 70-year-old white man trying to write teenagers. That's not working.
And I covered I watched the Hills Have Eyes movie, the remake movies. I've seen the original before. I don't particularly care for that original one as much as the remakes, but that was my first introduction to that franchise anyway. I watched the sequel that I'd never seen, and that was written by Craven and his son. And that, again, not perfect, but it is a script. It does have character arcs. It has development. It has, all the elements you would think that kind of film would have. So it's not like he can't do it. And and I'm not sure if he wrote I don't think he wrote the script for the first one, but he was in it like an executive producer, him and his son. So it was doable. He can do it, but I think he needs. Again, I think he's an ideas man. He's an ideas man, and he needs guidance as well. Like a bit like Lucas as well, George Lucas. I think he's a kind of an ideas man or a concept man, but you need a bit of direction. Or Dan Aykroyd with Ghostbusters. He came up with some weird and wacky ideas, and they went, okay, let's pull it back, bring it down, let's do this, let's do that. And then you get Ghostbusters. So again, it's not a bad thing on its own being that kind of person, but you do need, I think, assistance. And I think you need to kind of stand your ground when it comes to stuff like this. And I feel like he's not a man to stand his ground. Again, I did Deadly Friend, not one I would really recommend either, potentially, but I think there's maybe a bit more to that I like than this. But yeah, on the whole, like you said, that scene where she runs off into the woods, she's literally walking down a main road into a town. If someone is pestering you and trying to be sexually assault you or abuse you or anything like that, why do you run directly into the woods? It doesn't make any sense. You are putting yourself in danger there more so than if you just ran straight ahead towards the town where loads of people are and you can ask for help or you can go inside somewhere and hide. You go into the woods, you're asking for trouble, unfortunately. And again, it's the writing of it and the logic of the characters, what they're doing. Again, doesn't make sense, don't run up the stairs, bitch, all that sort of stuff. So yeah,
but not with the irony that of course Scream brings.
No, of course not, and that's part and parcel of the writing, and that's what Dan made a point. He was like, I think a lot of that is Williamson and his scripts and how sharp they are and what they bring to that franchise. So yeah, I think unfortunately, sadly, it's just not great, and that's one of the ones I was just like, I just felt like we were pulling it apart. It was uninspired. It was uninteresting. Like you said, I like some of the villainous costumes and the ideas that they're playing with. There's that bird scene in the classroom, which is really cool, and that's really interesting. And Dan said he saw it on TikTok, so there's something there. There is some elements of this that do shine through, but because the producers have cut it to pieces and reworked and rejigged it, because they were afraid it wasn't going to work, then that's what ruined it. So it's not really Wes's fault that this came out the way it did. It's everything else around him, which is kind of part and parcel of the wrong direction format, and is figuring that out. But yeah, so that is my second dreadful film that I've covered on this podcast. Again, raise us up again, Jack. Bring us back into the light. Save my soul. Don't let anybody let this film take it away. Save my soul.
Fair enough. Well, I'll stay in the genre. And it was a film that had been on my watch list for the longest time. Like, half a decade at least, half a dozen years. I don't know. And it's A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night,
Ah, very good. Very good.
which came upon a whole wave of hype. Everyone was talking about it, and for some reason, I just didn't get around to watching it. I just kept thinking, I'm going to, and then I didn't, and then I forgot about it, and then you covered it, and I was like, ah, great. So now I'm going to watch it. It's amazing. It's the announcement of a very special talent. The only film when I watched it, the film that I compared it to in terms of the kind of low budget, low fi indie roots, but yet the sheer like understanding of filmmaking and genre filmmaking, but also managing to do something totally innovative and different was Robert Rodriguez. Now they've gone on to very different careers, but this felt like the first time I watched El Mariachi, and I was like, "Fuck, he made that with that? Like how?" I've seen Clerks. Kevin Smith did a great job, but it looks like it costs that much. El Mariachi does not. A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night does not. And then it's like obviously dripping with subtext. It feels like a special film, and probably the kind of debut somebody makes that they never managed to the heights they never managed to reach again. And I hope that's not true. Yeah, it's a very special film. It also the other comparison that I would make is something like Let the Right One In.
Yes, I was going to say that. Yeah.
But when I saw that again, I was like, wow, like we've seen a million vampire movies, and there's some really good ones, and there's some really terrible ones, and then there's ones which do something within the genre that you didn't know you could do. And I think this does it, and Let the Right One In does it because they focus their stories in their culture, and it really tells you something about where it's set and the kind of people this is about. And so, yeah, I think you have to be in the right mood to watch A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night. But if you're in the mood to watch it, I think you will find something very special indeed.
Yeah, a great recommendation, that one. Yeah, again, it's moody. It's got something to say, but it has a sense of fun and humor to it. The black and white aesthetic is interesting as well. Filming it as such, again, probably a financial choice, but yeah, there's a lot it's playing with. It's very rare you will see a skateboarding, hijab wearing, vampire walking home alone at night. And again, what does that say? What is that about? Why are women afraid in the evening? Why are women afraid of night? And she, I think if I remember rightly, she only attacks the men that approach her or go for her. So that's clearly saying something about the predatory nature of the world that they're living in and trying to exist in, but can't. But she has that ability to take her revenge or take it out on them. But yeah, wonderful choice, that, and something completely kind of unique. And again, and that's one of the things with that I think we tried to vary as much of the vampire films as we could between all of us and all the people involved in the podcast. We went out of our way to go, right, this is very different and this represents this type, and this same with the witches. Like I went deep into the witch podcast, and I was like, I want to look at all the different, because again, there's vampires all over the world and different cultures, and there's witches, they're kind of synonymous as well, and I like exploring that and seeing it through different eyes and different perspectives, and taking that in. And I love international film, from the best to the worst. I think it's such an untapped market even now. Even still, people refuse to read subtitles, or oh no, I don't fancy that and stuff. And again, like Bong Joon-ho said, we're missing a whole world of entertainment just because we feel uncomfortable or can't be asked reading. If you struggle with reading, fair enough. I'm dyslexic, so I get it. I understand that. But I think there are other ways and means to do it and to enjoy it. If you want to do a dub, do a dub. Nothing wrong with a dub. Some people will judge a dub, but I've got no issues with dubs. A lot of the time, if it's an international film, I put it on. If it's a dub, I leave it on. If it's subtitles, I leave it on. I don't tend to change it. I don't go, oh no, I don't like this. I'm just like, the film's on now. I'm watching it. This is it. I've accepted what is now playing, whatever it may be.
Yeah, I'm normally a sub guy, but actually, Scott and I have been watching Jackie Chan police story movies, and I just by accident started a little experiment where I watched the sub originally because I was watching them I was watching them in January, and obviously now we're towards the end of March. So in the rewatch of the films, because I'd watched them fairly fresh, I'd watched the dubbed. So I could kind of not pay as much attention because I'd only watched it 2 weeks ago or a month ago, wherever it turns out to be. It's fascinating actually seeing how much a dub can change the context of the story, let alone the reading of a line because of course they do westernize a lot of the dialogue. So it has been a really interesting experiment. And I'm with you. I think, it doesn't matter, whatever you're comfortable with. I would choose a sub first and foremost.
Course,
I mean, I'm an English teacher, so do you know what I mean? Reading's not a problem for me. I don't mean that. That sounded really rude and disparaging. I didn't mean it that way. Sorry to everyone.
I'm
I know.
dyslexic, so you're going to poke fun at me. I see.
In fact, I'm the guy who looks out for you every day.
Oh, you can't read. I can.
That is actually how I teach.
No.
Point at this kid. Yuck.
Learning difficulties.
Yeah,
let's bully
exactly
him.
what I do.
Yeah, I'm sure. No, I know what you meant. I know what you meant. It's fine. I forgive you.
That's more for the people that use it as the excuse. That's
exactly.
How I mean
It's like people that don't watch films in black and white. Like, why?
Oh God, yeah.
Why?
I won't watch anything past 1990. What the fuck are you talking about?
Fucking put a film on, you prick. I don't see that. I don't get why people have that opinion. You're allowed to have it. I disagree with it strongly, but you're allowed to have it. But I think you're closing yourself off to things. You are closing yourself off to films and entertainment. I will genuinely watch anything. I watched, Tonya recommended Belle. I watched that. I thought it was a fucking superb film. It's a period drama. I don't really care for period dramas, but I gave it a chance because she recommended and felt strongly about it. And lo and behold, me and Ria mentioned it on separate, banned books episodes. We didn't know we were both referencing the thing, but we did in subsequent episodes. And we were like, oh my God, we both referenced that beautiful film. Oh yeah, because it's good. And I will literally, you tell me to watch it or we're going to do it for podcast or, again, not always. If you're telling me to watch something if you tell me to watch something that's popular or mainstream or something, I might be like, yeah, I'll get around to it, and I will. If it takes me 24 years, like Gladiator, I'll get there eventually. But I will. I'll try. If somebody is making the argument for it, I'll give it a go. I watch poor things. I do watch new films. I'm not. Some people are like, you only watch old shit, and I was like, no, I watch new stuff as well. For better or for worse. But yeah, I think that's another wonderful choice, and again, very, very telling of what the podcast is about. I love to have variety and diversity, and again, different cultures and perspectives. I'm very interested in that. I don't want to do just white male straight action movies. I don't want to just do that. That's not just something and there's nothing wrong with doing that. There's nothing you can have your podcasts that do that, but that's not what I
do. Thank you.
So yeah, no, that's a wonderful choice, and again, it's very I do love international film, and that's a really good choice and a good kind of spotlight on those kind of films that we do cover on the podcast a lot. Right, next up, I'm going to pick two movies now. I'm going to bunch those together.
Are you?
I'm going to put them two together. You might know what they might be because they were covered at the exact same time.
Chihuahua.
Yes. Not so much a yub nub for these two films, but you kind of knew they were coming. It is both Caravan of Courage and The Battle for Endor, the two Star Wars Ewok movies that were created for NBC or ABC by George Lucas himself. He's the one to blame yet again, speaking of George Lucas. And he took all of the people from ILM, all of the people, he was like, Star Wars, the holiday special, that was an aberration. Like, it will never happen again. We'll never make another bad Star Wars thing again. I want to be fully in control. I want all the team working on it. We're going to film it on Skywalker Ranch. It's going to be as Star Wars as possible. And he decided to make a shit version of Middle-earth with cuddly teddy bears. And it does not work. These are the two of my five. I'm not just bunching these into one choice. These two films, because they're both dreadful. The child actors, horrendous. like, just you want to peel your skin off. It's just awful. It's telegraphed acting. Again, child actors, best will in the world. Fair play, they did their best, but it's not very good. It's very telegraphed. It's like I said on the podcast, it's like, I really love the Ewoks. Beat, 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 smile. There's continuity breaking things in this. The Ewoks speak, but it's set before Return of the Jedi, or is it? Or is it set thousands of years before, or not? Are they speaking a different human dialect that they learn, which is one of the fan theories that Andy talked about in the podcast? No, I don't believe that either. There is some wonderful character design and model work and stop motion, but outside of that, there is just very odd choices. You've got literally a scene of an Ewok wanking off a magic tree within one of these films. There is, quite famously, a desert on the forest moon of Endor, which Andy screamed at the top of his lungs on the podcast. There are things that are broken within the Star Wars universe. Tony argued that this was the beginning of the end for George Lucas, as we would get the prequels, which some people love. We know some people are very fond of them. Mike Burton, but they're not maybe everyone's favorite or choice if they were to choose a Star Wars film. But yeah, these were, it's not very often I'll agree with Andy 100% entirely, but I did this one because he was right. As expressive as he is and as mad as he gets, I couldn't argue with his points. He made every point was extremely valid. And again, there were some things we found to like within it. Again, we found some positives, and we even to the second part, we had to split into two parts because we went on that long about them. I think the first one we went on for like an hour at least. Even we recognise we might be being too harsh, but still, they're bad.
They are bad.
And if you go, oh, Rise of the Skywalker was awful, watch these fuckers back to back. I dare you. I fucking dare you. And then watch Last Jedi. Last Jedi I'm a big fan of. Watch those and watch these straight after. See how you feel then. See where you land then and going, oh yeah, the fucking Disney ruined Star Wars. No. George Lucas ruined Star Wars with these. That's what he did. It's his fault. Blame him. He did it. And again, like there are some positives, what's his name? Joe Johnston. Literally, George Lucas gave him money to go and become a director. You go to film school, paid for it. There are some benefits to these films. He went on to direct The Rocketeer, which I'm a big fan of, Captain America: The First Avenger, and loads of other stuff. The Wolfman, whatever. There are some positives within this, and we talk about it, and it's a heck of a podcast. It's a big one, but just not good in any way. And I think mostly it comes down to the writing, which George Lucas wrote these scripts with his nanny. I think the problems start there.
Yeah. I mean, how can I disagree with any of that? I mean, I think Battle for Endor is worse than Caravan of Courage, but it's like, which poo-flavored chocolate milkshake do you want to drink less? Do you want the cow shit one or do you want the dog shit one? Do you know what I mean? It doesn't matter. There's something from Caravan of Courage that has always stuck with me ever since I watched it as a kid, which is when the main character is stuck under the water.
Yes, yeah.
Like that's actually, I don't know if that's a good scene because I don't think I'm a good judge of that anymore. But I remember being a child and watching that and finding that really scary. I'm sure it's now that you watch that, I think it's one of the worst things ever made. But I still, now thinking about it, can feel how I felt as a child watching it. It's like how we all felt watching that bit in Superman 3 when the woman gets turned into a robot.
Yeah.
It's also fucking scary. So I think just that one moment maybe elevates it up slightly higher. It at least has a plot. You're right. It is. I mean, how the Tolkien estate didn't sue George Lucas, I don't know. But it at least has a plot, the first one. The second one completely undoes everything. It kills everyone off in the first 5 minutes. It makes that first film completely pointless because
the Alien 3 of Star Wars.
Yeah, like the first one was saving the parents, and within the next film, within 5 minutes, they're dead, and just doesn't know what it wants to do for the rest of the movie. So yeah, I can't say I'd ever recommend anyone to watch these. I said myself to take. I think it's worth 90 minutes. These 3 hours of your life, no, don't do it.
Don't. And again, you're right. Like the writing in that first one, like the villains kill off the parents and they get what they want. They get this power source that they're after, but nobody knows why they need it, what it's for, how to use it. Like, and they think Sindel, the child, the toddler, basically a toddler, thinks that she'll know how to operate it. Like, it's bizarre, and because the villains get what they want straight away, the plot just absolutely goes out the window. They're like, well, they've won. They've got what they want. And then they're like, "Oh well, what do we do?" Oh, Wilford Brimley comes in with his diabetes, and and all that, and again, like he's trying. You can tell he's trying. But yeah, it's darker. It's more action packed. The second one, but also it has no soul. There's nothing to it. Also, that fucking narration in the first one as well. Like, is this David Attenborough narration? I get why it's there. I get why it's needed. But there was a line at the end where it's like, I've said it on the podcast, but it was like, and we learned that that all the good in the world, all light and positivity and justice. We learned that lesson that always wins out in the end. We learned that lesson, which we already knew, and I was like, that's what really fucked me off. And I was like, fuck you. You've put me through an hour and a half of pain. And you tell me that this journey, and again, they make it out like this, everyone will be happy now as well, which again is really annoying, because then we know that the second the next film starts, he'll get shot and blown up and killed. Again, like Mace gets killed. And I hated Mace. He was the worst protagonist in any film I've seen for a long time. But he died, and then there was no protagonist really. So I was kind of like, okay, all right, it's more action packed. And yeah, I went into it in much more detail in the podcast, but fuck me, they were hard watches. They're kind of infamous now for me and Andy, and I still talk about them to this day, and we still reference them. I think Mike said he may cover them at one point in the future, and I'd love to hear what he has to think or has to say
staunch
about
defender. Can he defend?
Can you defend those Ewok movies?
The indefensible.
Now, when I recorded that podcast, they were not available on Disney Plus because Disney was ashamed of them. They didn't want them, but they're there now. They're there now for your enjoyment. So if you want to watch them,
You say enjoyment
for
torture.
Your own torture, yes. And again, lovely Ewoks committing war crimes and trying to eat toddlers. The second they meet a human child, they go, "Let's fucking stab it." So yeah, but yeah, just. Again, there's heinous kind of errors and continuity mistakes with the franchise. So I think Mike might hate that more so than anything if he did watch it. I think it's those things that no doubt they'll be remaining legends for the rest of time because of all of the things that they broke. But yeah, fucking horrible. And like. If you're like nursing like that dead Ewok in Return of the Jedi, if you're like hoping it's going to come back to life, these Ewok films, are they going to improve? They won't. They're not coming back, and you don't want them coming back. Yeah, no. Like have an ATST just stomp on them continually for the rest of time. Again, we covered the holiday special. I don't know. I kind of feel like these are still worse in some ways. Like that's kind of entertainingly bad. These are just bad, I think. But again, that's another conversation for another time.
I'm going to ruminate on that. Yeah, that's an interesting one.
I'm sure. Again, it's kind of, I don't know. There's something kind of cheesy and weird about Chewbacca's granddad getting turned on,
watching porn and strippers.
In the living room while everyone else is walking around him. But anyway, again. That unfortunately that didn't make the cut because that's a TV show, not a film, so couldn't make the cut. But the Ewok film's good. They were made to be films. Okay, Jack, what's next?
Next, speaking of musicals, as the Star Wars Holiday Special is, and only Apocalypse. It's not wasting any time getting there. I know you're a big fan too. Fuck me, this film is good. On every level, like. Much like Grabbers, I suppose. Yeah. The production values, what they manage to do, the money they've got, the performances they get out of the actors, in the like seamless but intricate way they manage to weave the songs in the way like a proper musical should be made. Like the songs tell you how their character feels. The songs drive the plot forward. All of this in a movie about zombies. It's just brilliant. I think. It's one of the smartest movies I've seen for a really long time. I think Ella Hunt, who plays the main character, is an absolute star. I don't know why she's not gone on to go stratospheric. I think she has so much charm and charisma as the main character. I mean, equaled by I can't think what her best friend is called, but equaled by the character who plays her best friend in that. And even we get a classic bully character in this, much like we had in My Soul to Take. He is a character. He has a redemptive arc. There are reasons for why he behaves that way. I'm not excusing bullying, of course not. But we delve into why
you're coming across like a really good teacher at the moment, like making fun of dyslexics and okay with bullying.
Absolutely, because I find the bully that I want to get the dyslexic. That's absolutely
that's it. So you're manufacturing some bullying going on.
They come together, absolutely.
Like a master, like the puppet master you are.
That's it. So and it does that thing that Shaun of the Dead does. It's surprising and scary and kills people off, kills main characters off. Is not afraid to do that, but is also really, really funny. And it's one that you can't. One watch is not enough. It becomes a seasonal favorite. I mean, it needs to be one that you can go back to every year, Christmas after Christmas. I guess all this makes perfect sense. It's no secret how big of a fan of Buffy I am. It's the thing which has mostly shaped probably who I am as an adult man, was my love for that show. And I know there's problems behind the scenes, and I'm all for supporting the actors and the crew where things went wrong, but I still think the ethos of that show and what it's about and what it's trying to say is maintained. And the people who were involved in it still believe that that is true as well. The cast and crew and the writers and everybody involved in that. And this is kind of a little mini Buffy movie. Ella Hunt is Buffy, and it has that same sense of this is all just a big metaphor for something else. It's brilliant.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. It's a special one for me because it was one so my friend Nathan was like, you don't watch enough musicals, and I was like, well, they're not my favorite. They're not really my genre. I have a few favorites. I like Cabaret. I think is great. Again, because the story is good and it's got something to say. For me, I think unfortunately I'm a fan of story. I'm a big story guy. I like the story to be good. Even if the characters are not great, I need a story or I need characters, either or, to keep me kind of invested. With a lot of musicals, unfortunately, the focus is on the songs and the dancing and things. And I'm like, that's great. It's good. You're very talented. Wonderful. But it doesn't grab me. And like with this has the story. This has the characters. But then the icing on the cake is the songs and the dance sequences and the horror element and the humor. And again, Tony Farina is a big fan of this. He was like, oh, I love Anna of the Apocalypse. Have you seen that? And I was like, Tony, I did a podcast on it 2 years ago. Go back and listen to that and how much I love it. Again, it's not really a review, I would say. I think me and Hannah kind of gush over it because we just love that film. And again, it is such a joyful thing. I had the soundtrack on the other day. It's not Christmas. It's nowhere near that time, but I felt like I needed that kind of boost, and that and it is a wonderful film and a wonderful soundtrack. Almost all of the songs are like bangers, like absolute bangers. And again, and they're kind of modern pop songs, and again, but they're good modern pop songs. Like there's something unique to it, but it still has that classic feel of those kind of Rodgers and Hammerstein films. It's not it's not Cats. Like Cats can get in the fucking bin for me as a musical. Shit. Just leave it in the poetry book. Just leave it in the T.S. Eliot. Just garbage. There's that Kimmy Schmidt episode where it's like the idea is that actors sit in the front row and they just all of a sudden get on stage and they're singing a song and they're like he goes backstage and is like, you've discovered the secret to Cats. You just dress up as a cat and do a singing monologue and you become part of the show and nobody knows. And that's kind of how I feel that Cats is. It's just a load of monologues. Sure, the music's great, whatever. But this has everything I would want. It has romance, it has drama, it has relationships, it has humor. It's relatable on so many levels. It has something to say, yet it's entertaining. And it's tragic that the creator of it didn't live to see the creation of the film. He was known for creating the Ryan Gosling meme. It's probably more famous of him not eating cereal, so much so that when the anniversary of that rolled around, Ryan Gosling kind of paid homage to him. And that's wonderful. And I even, at this point, this was my first alternativity stories proper. I kind of did it in the first year, in the first few episodes, kind of played with it, but didn't really do it proper for various reasons, technical and otherwise. But this year was the first year I was doing it. And unfortunately, because it is Christmas time, it's always a bit difficult to get people to record when I want them to record. But so what I did was I managed to bunch them all in like the last week of December. And I was like, right. And I spent a lot of my Christmas holiday, Christmas Day, Christmas Eve, Boxing Day, editing them and making sure I got them out before the end of December. Because I was like, I can't have this first theme Christmas month and them not come out in December. It's not going to happen. And I decided, because it was quite a positive review of it, I decided to tag the directors and the writers, and they listened to that podcast on Christmas Day and commented back, which made me feel really special that I'd spent all this time editing and fussing and frustrating when I could have been relaxing or drinking or eating or spending time with my family. I was like, no, I've got to get this out, and it meant a lot to me to do that. And they didn't have to listen to it that day. They didn't have to. I once got Carl Weathers once tweeted me on Christmas Day. He didn't have to do that then. He didn't have to, I was saying I was watching a Toy Story film with him in, a short film, but he did that. And that's like, I think that's incredible. It means so much. Just that little gesture. So I'm so glad I did that and made them aware of it. And again, they made comment, it's not really a review. And I was like, yeah, fair enough. We just really like it. I was like, it's fine. But yeah. So, and again, I'm very cautious about that. And again, how I, talk about. I'm not tagging George Lucas in the Ewok films review. I'll tell you that.
No.
But that's my choice. But I felt that was so overwhelmingly positive. I thought, I'll find out who they are. If they have a social media thing, I'll tag them. Why not? And yeah, so it was really nice that effort didn't feel. I mean, it wasn't in vain anyway, but it kind of just was the cherry on the cake that I needed. That after spending all that time, just crunching and getting those in and out and done. But yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. It's everything I would want in a musical, in a film, in a comedy, in a horror comedy. Wonderful. I agree. Ella Hunt should be doing gangbusters and should be somewhere. I don't know what she's doing at the moment, but I know she was in a few big name things, but I don't think she plays like a main part in a lot of them. But I think she'll do well on the kind of, well, I think once this picks up a bit more traction, I think it is growing over the years. There's more and more fans of it each year. And I'm glad I brought it to people's attention if it wasn't already. And I really do think more people should watch it because it is a delight. It's delightful. As for,
and maybe it's by, sorry, I'm going to say maybe it's by design for her. Maybe she's happier with it.
Yeah, sure.
With it. Maybe she doesn't want that kind of limelight and stardom. Not everyone does. Maybe she's happy taking on character roles, but she is that leading lady. She is that presence in this movie, at least.
Yeah.
She is an absolute superstar. And anytime you're feeling down, just stick on Turning My Life Around, because my God, that will just bring a smile to your face. And it will literally turn you around in that moment and make you just smile and be happy again.
It does. And even the, Hollywood ending, I think is a good, and the opposite end of the spectrum, I think is arguably my favorite song in that. And again, it plays into the ending of the film as well, which is wonderful. I think there's some wonderful kind of symmetry and things going on. But yeah, just amazing. And I sampled some of it in the podcast as well, some of the songs. And yeah, there's a lot. If you're a theatre kid like I was, there's a lot for you to love there anyway. But I think even if you're not, even if you're just maybe you just want to watch Christmas films, or maybe you want to watch a musical, or maybe you just want to watch a high school thing, maybe you want to watch something that's Shaun the Dead-esque, then absolutely, I think wherever you're coming from and how you're approaching this, there's something to like on any level.
Yeah, and Shaun of the Dead is I don't mean this in a rude way, it is the obvious comparison, which I'm sure we made and everyone made. But Shaun of the Dead is held in the highest of regard, as in, this is as good as it gets. This is Evil Dead levels of balancing horror and comedy. Well, so's this. And it's got song and dance numbers in it. So it is as good as, if not arguably, because of the added elements, better
Hmm.
than what Shaun of the Dead is doing. It hits all the same beats that Shaun of the Dead does, and I think probably, what I'm trying to say is really it deserves the same credit, deserves the same
Hmm.
status that Shaun of the Dead gets given.
Yeah. And again, like, I've done clone bores on films that are, arguably rip-offs or very similar, or, but it doesn't mean they're lacking in quality just because they are a bit similar, or they have a similar nature to them, or they're trying to riff on something that's popular. That's not necessarily a bad thing or seen as a bad thing. It can be, sure. You'll have your Rebel Moons and your other things that are like very, very thinly veiled films from other franchises, just slightly rewritten. But like, this is not. It's not. Yeah, there are some cash grabby elements to things, but it's not detrimentally makes it bad. It's not a bad thing necessarily. There's some great films that are like you were saying, like Grabbers. That's riffing on Shaun of the Dead and all those other things. Doesn't make it horror for it. Isn't it's not directly doing that. It's kind of riffing on those type of things, and it's similar in a lot of ways. But you don't go, oh, that's a rip off, that's shit, because it's similar to Shaun of the Dead. You embrace that because you go, well, I like this film, this and this thing, so this is quite similar. Yeah, it might be bad, but that is why people will watch the same genre films, because they go, well, it's in that genre, I like that genre, like that actor, bam, I'm going to watch that. Yeah, and that's it. So there are those elements, but it doesn't, again, take away from anything of the uniqueness and quality of Anna and the Apocalypse, which I think is a wonderful title as well.
Agreed. Yeah, but I don't think this isn't trying to be Shaun of the Dead. I don't think. I think it's just. I think you can argue this wouldn't have got made without Shaun of the Dead.
Sure.
Because I think probably when this script was approved, they were like, "Oh, it's Shaun of the Dead, but with songs," is what I imagine happened in the meeting.
Yeah.
But also, this wouldn't have got made without the Buffy musical episode. There's no shadow of a doubt to be.
Yeah.
Having seen that so many times, the bully character in Anna the Apocalypse is the Spike song from the Buffy musical, and you can make these parallels all the way through.
Sure.
But that doesn't take away from what it is as its own entity, because we could do this probably with every single bit of modern popular culture where you can trace it back. And Shaun of the Dead wouldn't have got made without
I
this,
do it all the time. I do it all the time. This show is all about connections and the webs, and I'll hark back to something I've talked about, or an actor or a character, and there's so many links and different strands, sparking off of everything, which is kind of part and parcel what I like. The idea of the clone bores is finding those connections, and it's even more difficult because most of the time I haven't seen the film, so I've got to find the connections without knowing that they're necessarily connected. And sometimes people will go, oh shit, yeah, the same actors are in this or that, or the producer did that, and or he's riffing on him or what he does, and yeah, so that's one of the wonderful things I find podcasting and looking at films or comics, or the talent behind the scenes or in front of the camera or what have you. But yeah, you are correct. It isn't detrimental to what they have wonderfully created and what they've captured. And again, more eyes, I think a shit ton more eyes need to be on this.
Agreed.
Okay, was that your final one?
No, I have one more because you combined two of yours together.
Oh shit, yeah, I did do that. See, forgetting my own rules. Well, do you want to do that now, and then or no, actually, should I do mine now? We can end on a high.
Why don't we end? Yeah, let's end on a high.
Let's end on a high. So talking about, again, we've been talking about variety and I like different perspectives, and I was doing Western month. And I wanted to have a kind of a feminist take on the Western genre. We'd had done Django and The Great Silence, and we'd done the Django comic, Django Unchained, and Zorro. They team up, and
High Plains Drifter.
High Plains Drifter, yeah, well remembered. I'd forgotten then for a second. But yeah, so a lot of kind of male-led, kind of interesting takes, but I wanted something different. I wanted it to, and there was a lot of films that have female protagonists or female characters that lead the story of a Western, and I wanted to kind of have a take. And I decided to go for one that was And kind of an indie film. It was well reviewed by critics, not so great with the audiences, which probably should have given me an inkling of the quality of the film. And it is Meek's Cutoff, which is the story of a group of I don't know what you would call them, travelers. It's a caravan, much like the Endor films.
Oh, now you see, I pick on dyslexics. I've seen what you see the common thread here that you're picking on, and I see it.
Picking up people in caravans I don't
I
like.
won't use any of the terms that we're not supposed to use anymore, but we all know what we're thinking.
Okay, fair enough. So they are on the Oregon Trail. They're being led by a man called Meek, who appears that he may not know quite where he's going, potentially, and potentially could lead them further astray into, way off track, into kind of danger and dangerous territory. And you think, okay, this could be exciting. This could be very interesting. Are they going to encounter snakes and bears and, outlaw bands or, indigenous people potentially? What's going to happen? Nothing. Nothing fucking happens. That's what happens in the film. Nothing. It is a minimalist Western. And I say this on the podcast. And again, before we recorded the podcast, I'm pretty sure they said, by the way, don't tag the director in this one, Dan. It was again Hannah and Nathan. And I was like, don't worry, I've got shit to say. And even when they were like, have you watched it yet, Dan? And I was like, no, I haven't, by the way. And he was like, right, okay. I was like, fuck, okay. I literally was just about to put it on and I was like, okay, this isn't, I'm going to go in with an open mind. It's got Michelle Williams. It's got, I think Bruce Greenwood's in it. Paul Dano's in it. So it's great cast, like amazing cast. But the most exciting section of the film is when one of the wagons comes loose and rolls down a hill. That is it. They are showing you, like with westerns, obviously they're not quite as how they're made out to be in TV and film. They're not as, you've done Deadwood, and that's quite a fairly somewhat realistic take on the western and the western world, the frontier and everything. And this is going out of its way to show you how they wash pots, how they clean their clothes, how they do everything. And I'm like, I could be doing this myself. I should be doing this myself because my house is in a tip, but I'm watching other people do it and it's fucking boring. It is, I think it's an hour and a half or just a little less, but it drags massively. Probably more so than 1941 did. It is, there's no real character development. There's no real character arc. Again, the most exciting point is when Michelle Williams points a gun at Bruce Greenwood and they decide to make their own way out and try and figure this way out. They've got a captured indigenous person and who's trying to lead them, but they're like, is he leading us into trouble and danger, or is he leading us to where we need to go? There's all these kind of questions which never get answered, never. And it has, and again, it's all boring, all uninteresting. Nothing happens. And then the ending is I can't fucking believe it, but it's annoyed me so much. It's a really vague ending. You don't know what happens because they've run out of food. They don't know where they're going. They think they're going to die. They let this indigenous person lead them. He's leading them, and they go and they turn to the villain of the piece, Meek, and they go, "What do you think we should do, Meek?" And he was like, "It's already written." Right, okay. And then they walk. The shot is them walking away, and slowly but surely, one by one, they fade off the camera. They fade out of the shot, and that's it. So I really was hoping this was going to be something. It wasn't, and unfortunately, I was supremely disappointed. And it was, and I think the worst crime a film can be for me is boring. And like uninteresting. It can be if it's crazy and wild like Demons, and it doesn't make any sense, fine, but at least it's crazy and wild. I'm interested. I'm watching it. My eyes are glued to it because I don't know what crazy thing is going to come next. But with this, it was just one boring thing after another. And I don't know if maybe it was the realism. I don't know if it was kind of that mumblecore movement, part of the indie scene. But Jesus, it just put me to sleep. The podcast, I think, is only about 45 minutes because I literally am like, I don't even want to talk about this. It's that, but I'm like, and it's usually we're like two people, like this is running long now when we set a timer and we're already gone over the timer that I've set. And like that, I was like, nah, I don't. And I feel, and I apologize to my guests because I was like, next time you will pick it. And I think we did ginger snaps next. Well, luckily, and they decided let's do ginger snaps, and that was a blessing. I was like, I don't even want to attempt to pick something else after this. I was like, you go and do it because I feel bad for making you watch this as much as I made myself watch this. Dreadful film. But yeah, have you seen this one, Jack?
I have, but not since it came out. I remember watching it came out. I think what year did it come out? 2010. So that's I think I was maybe still doing my reviews, or maybe it was starting to tail off at that point. That was in the era that I was writing small scale film reviews for a small free London newspaper.
Nice.
And I have quite strong memories of watching it. Like you talking through it, I can picture it all. And the reason why I think I was still reviewing at that point is because I feel like I was sat with a bunch of critics watching it. And I remember the buzz being, as you said, like, oh, this has done something different. Oh, this is minimalist is the right word. Oh, this is the feminist take on the traditionally, patriarchal masculine Western. But I didn't go back and watch it in order to listen to your podcast. Now, again, I don't think I have any strong feelings either way. I think it's interesting. I think it's brave what you tried to do, but I totally understand why somebody, yourself, whoever, will watch it and just think, what the fuck is the point in this? I've watched quite a few films. I felt that way. I've tried things out to try them out because you do, right? That's what we do. That's why we get on. That's why we've bonded. Because we're willing to give anything a go. I've watched some Danish dogma movies. I won't ever watch them again, but they existed and it was a movement and they were trying stuff out. So I watched them. And I guess this I would put in that realm of like, it's a director trying to do something different in a genre where, trying to do something unexpected, trying to have something to say, trying to talk about the minutiae of life and what women had to go through in these times, what they had to put out with. And
that's
I get it.
That's what I hope for.
Does it make a film?
Yeah. Does it make for an interesting film? Again, it's kind of but they don't. I mean, it's in the subtext that it's a harsh environment. It's hard for them, and they have to struggle, and they don't know if they're going to make it, and they're going to die. And yeah, sure. But I've seen films portray that in more interesting ways and maybe more exciting ways. But again, it's just like a lot of conversations that don't necessarily lead anywhere. I get that she's going for this very much like the realism of it, the realism of the West and what it was actually like, which is fine. There's a lot of Westerns I don't care for because they are long and boring. This one was short and boring, but it was still boring, and that's fine. Like I appreciate that they're not always going to be, amazing, but like Antonia Bird's Ravenous, I think it's I want to say Antonia Bird. That is an incredible Western, a horror cannibal Western, and it doesn't feel like your gung ho kind of Western. You're not your John Wayne types or even your Clint Eastwood revisionist Westerns. That's something incredible and interesting, and fascinating, and dark and bleak, and saying a lot about that time and that era. And I'd much rather watch that. I watched that 10 times in a row than watch this again. And that's something special and something fascinating. But yeah, for this, I will say it looks gorgeous. The shots of the Oregon Trail, the mountains, the countryside, it is stunningly visually, stimulating. But that's it. It's all style and no substance for me, unfortunately, this film. And that's why I've included it in this list. And again, a lot of the films you'll find that I've watched, not been boring. They've not been boring. There've been a lot of things, but they've not been boring. I will say that, and I kind of pride myself on that. And this was one. And again, I say that I do research into them, and sometimes I can partially spoil things for myself. But I choose them for a reason, to give these months, even within these 4 podcasts that I'll do within a theme month or
Mhm.
5, whatever, however it falls. I will give myself as much variety as possible with guests, with voices, and again, creatives, films, comics, whatever it may be. I try and be as varied as possible and go through the whole kind of genre because it's usually based around genres or types or something. And that's what I was trying to do there. Unfortunately, sometimes variety can kick you in the arse, and not seeing things can kick you in the arse, and that's what happened on that occasion. I mean, I still do. I still take risks. I still don't watch stuff and give it a go because I want my, purest thoughts and feelings on something. And again, there's certain films I'll be rewatching and rewatching, like Candyman I've rewatched, and there's a few others. Johnny Mnemonic that I've not recorded yet, but is coming before this. I'm rewatching that. I've seen it before, but I'm looking at it with new eyes. But I do try and do it with kind of my first experience with it. And that's what I did, and that, unfortunately, you get a risk, you get a reward. Sometimes you get a risk and you fall on your face, and this was one of those times. And you can hear it on the podcast, you can see it on the podcast. It's shorter than most, and yeah, so but unfortunately, yeah. And again, this isn't necessarily the worst out of the 5 I picked. It's just, this is just a kind of random order. So but this is just this one again. All these other films that I've listed, not been boring. They've been bad, but not been boring. And this one is criminally one of the worst because it was boring. But that is mine. So please give us something that's exciting, that's going to reinvigorate me, wake me up again.
Well, you used the phrase there, style over substance. I'm going to say style and substance. From
Ooh.
our guy that we spoke about, William Friedkin, To Live and Die in LA.
Yes.
Again, it feels like a bit of a cheat because I was the guest on the episode, and that's not why I've picked it. It's because, fuck me, that film is a masterpiece. I would say my favorite working director is David Fincher. He's not flawless. He's got a couple of films in his CV that didn't quite go to plan from my perspective. I also really like Nicholas Winding Refn. I think he's a very interesting character. The kind of movies he produces.
William Friedkin doesn't.
No, fuck. Well, and I haven't watched that yet. To be fair, you sent me something earlier. I need to find the time when we finish to watch it. But I do, and I've watched his TV shows as well. And he has a very fascinating take on the world that I am drawn to. And I think those two filmmakers have been massively influenced by Friedkin. Michael Mann as well, I think, is somebody who has gone into their DNA and their makeup, but he's also another director that I admire. And To Live and Die in LA, just, you and I had already covered Sorcerer together, and we were going to do something else for that podcast that was for Alternativity Stories, wasn't it? We were going to do our top 5 like TV episodes, Christmas TV episodes,
which we will get to this year. Promise.
We will, yeah. And he said, "Oh, let's do this because we did Free Kid, and obviously we'd lost him that year, and
yeah, we recorded prior to him dying, and again, that's part of the zeitgeist curse of Spider-Dan and the Secret Balls, which sometimes it's a positive thing. I'm covering something and it comes up, or something related to it happens, but sometimes negative things happen as well, unfortunately. And that was one of them. Yeah, and it was. I felt like this feels right because again, it was at the time, and I was like, actually that was it. I bought To Live and Die in LA the day he died. So it kind of felt right. It felt, and it's something we'd already talked about, I think, or I think I referenced it in Sorcerer and saying how good it was. And then I was like, it just feels like the natural progression. And again, like, it wasn't like we're not going to get to the TV specials and stuff, but yeah, absolutely. I think we made the right decision.
Yeah, no complaints here. And that's just because there's this wonderful dichotomy between a movie that's all about counterfeiting being completely real, or feeling like completely lived in and real. And yeah, it's a fantastic movie that it knows exactly what it is and what it wants to be. And you were talking before about Wes Craven with My Soul to Take, and how like people got in the way and they told me he had to make changes and they chopped his movie up. And like, we know from what we know of Friedkin and the way he used to speak, he took no prisoners. But you can tell from this movie, if they put any pressure on to make any changes, do you really need that weird like scene when everyone's like the postmodern the word is escaping me. Performance art scene. Yes, I fucking do, because it tells me this about this character. It tells my audience this, and like it's going to matter later on. Do you really need the sex scenes and the way they've been shot? Yes, I do, because, and I can just see him probably doing it all the way through. Do you really need counterfeit money that looks this realistic? Yes, I do. And actually, it's going to cause me problems down the line, but still, I'm committed to this fact. Do you really need to drive this car the wrong way down the freeway? Yes, I do. And I'm going to say, I just think, it's a committed movie, and it all for the better. It is one of the most raw and exciting, I probably would say influential thrillers, without it being one that people speak about a lot, interestingly. But the DNA of it is all over. Chris Nolan, another director you put out there, he's seen this movie and he's heavily influenced by it. I think it's a very special film, and I think Sorcerer is perfect because of the bravery it took to make that movie, and I think people would watch that and hate it, and I understand why. But this, I think, is actually probably better than Sorcerer, and that's saying something, I think.
But apart from that weird opening,
In To Live and Die in LA,
yeah, the weird opening, yeah, when we were like, what is this?
on the bridge.
Yeah, the guy jumping off with the terrorist and all that. Yeah, and we were like, and like both of us were like, the film doesn't start there, does it? And it was like, no, it does.
It's like the end of it's like the In the Line of Fire is
hold open. Yeah,
as a piece of what it's trying to do and what it in that kind of cop thriller genre. It's something truly special.
Again, it's not bad. It's not a bad sequence. It's just I remember us like being like, it's just odd that it's placed here and that it's but I agree. I think it's an excellent film. And again, one we've touched on, but hey, Jack, it's your top 5. It's if you want it, if it's your, this is your choice. I'm not gonna say we've got to cover this or we've got to talk about this one.
Yeah, I mean, and Sorcerer's one I had seen before, so that was why. Because under the parameters I gave myself, films that I watched because you were covering them. It happens to be that you gave me 2 excellent movies that I hadn't seen before.
Win.
So thank you.
Win-win. Yeah. No, I love that film. Again, I bought it on Blu-ray. I think it's still available on YouTube as well, that one. So go and check that out. And again, I was very careful about spoilers for that one because there's a pretty big spoiler towards the end. So I was like, guys.
Oh, is there?
Yes, there is. But I won't say. I won't spoil that one thing. I won't spoil. But I was kind of like, you probably want to watch it before you listen. Out of all of the films I've done, I'm kind of like, because I'm going to spoil it. You know me, I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to spoil it. Might not even say that spoiler warning, but get ready because that's what I do. I can't talk about films a lot of the time without spoiling them in some form. But yeah, excellent choice and what a film. Again, one of the least Christmassy films we've done, definitely on the podcast. Barely even that. And Andy, I'm sure, would argue some of the ones I've done with him are even less Christmassy than that. But yeah, it's definitely one. Definitely doesn't have the jolly holidays feel, that one, in any form. But wonderful actors, wonderful performances, so unique, such a unique vision for a film. Interesting behind the scenes facts as well, and what he was doing and how he was doing it. It was his comeback film. He considered it his kind of comeback film, and it did. It worked. Gangbusters made money. But yeah, you're right. Still isn't really talked about as much as it should be. Even Sorcerer now has more of a kind of a following. I know he had to buy, I think we talked about on the Sorcerer podcast, he bought the rights back and then went on tour and showed it everywhere. So I think that's why it probably has a bit more of a following now than To Live and Die in LA. But yeah, wonderful, wonderful choice again, Jack. You've chosen well your top 5.
Yeah, it's just tough, We spoke at the top about how you're the guy who makes people watch shit. Well, sometimes you are, but also, look at that list of movies you've spoken about tonight.
Exactly.
There's plenty of quality out there too.
Exactly. Like, again, I'm not. Again, it was just a thing. Like, too many people have been making I think it all kind of started with Necromantic, I think, and on the VHS Strikes Back, and from then on, it was just like, it's just gonna fucking keep giving us shit to watch. I'm not gonna watch it, but I'll listen to the podcast. But I'm not fucking watching it, which is fine. You don't have to listen to the podcast every time. You don't have to watch all the films every time. If you're a completionist like Jack, which again he is, because he's gone back and watched even the ones that were even briefly mentioned in these podcasts. He's gone back and double checked and to decide on this top 5. But yeah, I do there are good things. And again, there is buried treasure. There is diamonds in the rough. But sometimes it's more interesting to talk about the rough, to get a bit of rough, a bit of strange rough. It's all right. It's good. It's healthy. You need a palate cleanse every now and again. So yeah, again, I talked about Candyman this year, very popular, very well, people have covered it, much better than I have in many ways. But I still really enjoy, and again, it was a film I hadn't gone back and watched because it terrified me as a child, and that's. But I'm so glad I did. I'm so glad that we've had the opportunity to talk about it, and again, I think the patrons this year, including yourself, are picking some excellent options out of the options that are given by the guests, because I'm letting the guests choose the options unless they don't mind me choosing, and I'll suggest some weird stuff like eight-legged freaks and big ass spider. That's definitely one of my choices that I gave to Math as options. But yeah, no, I think that was an excellent list. I don't know how many people agree with your list or agree with mine, but yeah, I think we've made sound arguments for both. But we're not done. I want to ask if you have you're going to have your top 5 worst, and I'm going to have my top 5 best movie.
I'm sure you have that list too, but
that's a Chris Phelps line. That one. That's one of Chris Phelps slip ups. That's a Freudian slip. Speaking of like getting your DNA all over town, that is a Chris Phelps. That's he's well practiced at that. But yes, Jack. So let's hear your top 5 worst very briefly.
Of course.
And then I'll give my top 5 best.
So 1941 is 1941 is there. I was getting totally thrown then. 1941 from 1979. That is there. I'm sorry to say, I hated Big Ass Spider.
Oh, okay. Right. Okay.
Because I really hated the character of Alex.
Right. Okay.
I wanted to punch him in the face. What a douchebag. I was not a fan of Better Off Dead.
Definitely.
The skitty nature of that. I had Ewoks Battle for Endor. And it might surprise you, my last on my bottom 5 is Bloodfest.
Okay, yeah, that was
you really liked.
We did, yeah.
And won your Clone Wars, whereas I really liked Hellfest. No, I enjoyed Hellfest.
Yes.
And really didn't take to Bloodfest at all.
Interesting, yeah. Again, that was an interesting day because Dan was round and we watched them together back to back. I think we went for like a McDonald's or something in between, but it was like we made a full day of it, so it was quite enjoyable. So I don't know if maybe that might have skewed my opinion because it was a bit more of a technically fun idea more so. But there's been many other kind of fest movies that have come out since and before. But yeah, that's an interesting one. Again, a lot of these are coming out of the Clone Wars as well.
Yeah, it was the concept of that one for me. I just they're kind of the supernatural element of the things coming out, of the things being real.
Yeah,
it lost me immediately.
It's all rigged. Yeah.
Yeah, they are real vampires. Like, whereas in Hellfest when it was like a single slasher kind of going off, and that I felt like that. Like you say, on another day, who knows?
Yeah, exactly. Like again, like my soul to take. You're a bit more fond of that than I was. Again, Hellfest is quite similar in a lot of ways to that. In some respects, it is a kind of standard slasher. I think for me, the slashers that I like have some sort of kind of identity about them, like My Bloody Valentine. Like as weird and as unusual that is, you can't really you can't argue that they didn't steering to the skid and the weirder elements and the more unusual elements while still holding on to those slasher tropes, I guess. But yeah, fair enough. That's fine. So my best. So some of these you'll be familiar with. So my best is Anna and the Apocalypse. Yeah. I've gone with The Bridge from World War II Month, another international film. I think and even Andy was surprised how good that was. He was like, "Oh my God, Dan, you found a good film." I was like, why am I got this relationship and bad films? And he was like, "No, this is like one of the best films I've ever seen." Max loved it as well. He was a big fan.
Very moving.
Yeah, just very powerful. You managed to watch it at the time, I remember, and you really enjoyed it too. So yeah, I think that was again another wonderful little gem that we dug out. Lady Bird, I really liked. Again, indie movie, not really my kind of bag of something, but yeah, it was something really, again, very different to what I usually watch, and again, surprising and interesting, and that's why I like to take those risks and get out of my comfort zone, because you discover films like that. And again, it's very well regarded anyway, much like Gladiator or something like that. But again, I hadn't seen it; it's new to me. So yeah, that was a real quality film. Again, something very different from what we usually cover. Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story. I already love that film. It was a big favorite of mine anyway. Going into the podcast, I was like, I'm going to get to revisit something I really love. I hope it holds up. It absolutely did. Again, there's some problematic elements, but again, I can kind of overlook them to a degree. And then probably the best film I've covered. It was between this one and Ran, I think. But just a genuinely great film. I went with The Great Silence, which me and Andy promised that we'd buy it on Blu-ray once it came out when they released it, and we did. I've still not rewatched it, but I'm getting to that point where I'm feeling like I need to again, because I just thought it was again a unique Western, a different Western. Again, had something to say, wonderful performances, dark, disturbing. It's historically accurate to a point as well. Things like that happened. So yeah, there's again, it's up there with kind of, for me, like, the good, the bad, and the ugly. It's again one of those films that is so good, and it's shocking that basically nobody knows about it. And that for me is still, I still look back at all the podcasts I've done, and I'm still going, yeah, but The Great Silence, man, The Great Silence was something else. And again, that was a two-parter because we talked about that film until the cows came home. But that's not strange for me and Andy, even with the bad ones or the good ones. But yeah, that for me is something else. And if you haven't seen it, I would recommend going and seeing that. Out of any film I've covered, that one is the one I would recommend over everything.
Yeah, and it's one that I, as you know, at the time I hadn't got around to seeing. So when it appeared on your list, I'm very thankful that I managed to find a copy to watch. Really enjoyed it, and I think if I'd watched it at the time, it may well have crept on mine. But I think because I already knew it was on yours, I thought, actually, for variety's sake,
yeah,
I'll have Grabbers instead.
I'm glad you included Grabbers. I think that's a good one. Again, very, very in tune with the podcast for the most part. Do you have any honourable mentions that you didn't include in your top 5?
Let's have a look for the top 5. Yes, I do. I've got probably the only one I've really got that would be close to get on the list that is not a film I'd already seen before would have been Byzantium, which I thought was a fantastic, again, another take on the vampire movie, but I thought was a really interesting take. And it's why is her name escaping me now? Who's the main actress in Byzantium?
Gemma Arterton.
Yeah, wow. Her performance in that is something really quite special. I think she's a good actress normally. When I've seen her in other stuff, I think she's been good to great. I think in that that is one of those times, that is Brad Pitt in Fight Club. That level of like pure magnetism. So that would be the only one off the honorable mentions for best.
Yeah, that's a good shout. Didn't win that podcast though. Didn't win, even though it was that good. It still didn't. Win.
It was up against another cracker.
It was, yeah, it truly was. 2 absolute belters, and again, ones I hadn't seen and really enjoyed. Dishonorable mentions from me would be Dead Silence, which was not long before we did My Soul to Take. I think a very recent one, End of Days. Yeah, not great, not good, not good. I've already mentioned it on this podcast, Deadly Friend. Sorry, Wes. Again, not brilliant.
Proper picking on him.
Sorry, Wes. I'm a bully now. You've created me. You've manipulated me into being the bully. Jaws: The Revenge.
Sure.
Yeah, I still think Jaws 3 is worse, but
Jaws: Revenge just escapes any kind of criticism for me because of that famous Michael Caine quote. I think the fact it exists just for that quote makes it okay.
Yeah, I agree. There's something. Yeah, I'll talk about it on the podcast. Go back and listen. Now, I might get a bit of hate for this one, but I feel like as much as
come on, Dad. Tell me what you want. What you really, really want.
You know it. It is Spice World. It is Spice World, but like I enjoyed the podcast, I enjoyed Gary's story and how it helped him kind of come out as a gay man. The very important kind of moment in the podcast history, I think, and very telling. But as a film, I think I have similar feelings to Better Off Dead. It's skitty in the wrong way. It's just like there is a narrative. There's loads of cameos for no reason, particularly. There's no structure behind it. The gags are not funny. It's all very thin. They have a pregnant friend that turns up and disappears as the plot requires it. They meet aliens. What is this? You know, and I like the Spice Girls. I don't, I've got nothing against the Spice Girls if you're a fan of the Spice Girls, but as a film,
yeah,
not good. Fair. Yeah, we do have some listener comments. So I've asked people if they had any favorite moments or anything from the last 100 episodes, or if they just want to say something nice about the podcast. Just to make my large ego grow even larger than it already is. So John Hammond, our friend, says, the highlight for me was being given the opportunity to make my podcast debut with you, pal. Talking about one of my favorites, Trick or Treat, 1986. So thank you very much for that. Aside from that, some of my favorite episodes have been Kickboxer versus Bloodsport with Dave and Bex, he's saying, which is our friend Chris Phelps has been recently spotted at the BBC and compared to Bex, or people have been recognizing him as David Beckham, which is a stretch, I think, quite. I love how he's puffing up his chest in this podcast. I listened to it today, and he's like, "Yeah, I've got my best gear on. I've got my tattoos, my hair's done." He's like, I can. Speaking of ego, you can see him like just going like pumping it up, like growing larger, and he's like, "Made my year, made my year." Of course, it did, Chris. We love you. And yeah, just funny. So yeah, that was it. Visitor Q with Mike and Megan, one of the again another controversial choice. Not by me this time, so don't come crying to me when somebody says, "Oh, I can't believe you made Megan watch that." It was not my decision. That was Mike's. Tokyo Gore Police with and Griandi. We've not included any of those ones in the top fives, but it's nice that he enjoyed that. And then the My Bloody Valentine Clone Bores. He just says, wonderful, glorious stuff, mate. Always enjoy listening. So thank you, John. And John has just joined the Patreon, but as a free member currently. So I've dropped a couple of my earlier kind of Patreon creations so he can enjoy them while he's a free member. But I think he's going to join and pay eventually when he has the finances to. So I really appreciate that. He's a great guy, and he's always listening. Again, he's another big fan. I think he's always sharing and listening and commenting. So I really appreciate you, John. And just that was fun talking about Trick or Treat. But again, Trick or Treat may have made the bad list as well, potentially.
Yeah.
There's as much as I enjoy it, it's not great either. But I love that you love it, John. So more power to you. So Math, he says, I think you do an unbelievable job of boarding
straight out of 1941, Math.
Yeah, oof, yeah. And you need maybe he was one of the writers. Maybe he was maybe he's traveled back in time and said, "Hey, Bob Gale Zemeckis, I've got some jokes for you. They're rubbish." But yes, job of he says, unbelievable job boarding our entertainment pleasure. Been able to be a part of that, which is an honor. Also, then appear on a music track is mind blowing. So Derek Esoteric's music track sampled the podcast with me and Math. Probably because it was the first one he listened to, and he was like, "This is genius, must use it." But there you go. And yeah, like that's still happening to this day. It's still being listened to. Yes, sometimes your picks are questionable. Also, not always my picks. But yes, I can understand. But it's good to hear about them. Your views. Also, getting to meet you and Jack in person was a lot of fun. We're not friends, we're family. And he's included Vin Diesel, who I'm sure you're covering a lot of at the moment over on your podcast, Back to the Filmography.
I am indeed seeing a lot of Vin. It's true. Yeah, and I'm also glad that the two you've read out so far, I'm sure you've got some more. It makes me feel better that I picked my own episodes because these guys are picking their own episodes. So it's all
Yeah.
good. It's all fair.
Yeah, they're like, I was on that one. I was on that one. I was on that one. Speaking of people who pick their own episodes, Dave Horrocks, he says, I enjoyed when Mike had you watch Visitor Q, which is fair. I think, and again, sometimes the worst films make for the better podcast. This is my point. If I just talk about all the good ones, then not going to be that interesting all the time. And then he says, actually really enjoyed our chat and comparison of Bloodsport and Kickboxer. Again, his own episode. And then Math says,
what a bunch of egotistical people we are.
Just love listening to
That's
themselves.
Vainglorious. Just
it's not like I listened back to all the podcasts we made with 1941 and all of my choices instead of actually watching the films again because I couldn't bear watching them all again.
No, that is totally fair.
Sure. That was my get out of jail free card. And then Math has responded to Dave's Visitor Q comment. He said, I like that in a way, but I felt bad for Megan in that one. Didn't we all? And then it left me thinking that Mike was the mustache twirling bad guy in that. I mean, he definitely was the villain, Math. He was the villain. And then Dave said, I enjoyed the last stop on the hype train discussion of Goodfellas with Andy, a genuine classic. I'm going to imagine he's talking about the podcast and not the film. That's what I'm going to hope. The genuine classic.
Oh, surely.
And then, speaking of mustache twirling villains, Mike comes in with a gif of Dick Dastardly. And he says, my favorite thing is getting to collaborate with one of my podcast besties. Our Carnage podcast is one of my all-time favorites. Hearing you and Andy on the Ewok movies and the holiday special is one of my first introductions to you. So they are the highlights. But the loose Shakespeare movies with Tony was a brilliant pod. And I loved your bear pod with Math. Your pod with Natalie was fantastic, as it also soft-launched Disney discussions. Which
your feminist Disney characters, yeah.
Yes, the almost 4-hour podcast. That one, like these podcasts get away from me, much like this one is doing now. But that one got away from me, and I was like, oh fuck! But this is all good. I'm gonna have to keep it. But yes, no, that was very nice of you to say, Mike. That was all really wonderful. So yeah, I appreciate it. And I'll be honest, that Carnage podcast is coming close to knocking Jack off his top spot. I think he's
had to happen one day. He can only hold on to it for so long.
Yeah. So our Rear Window discussion with all the different versions of Rear Window and Vertigo and all the other stuff, that is just barely holding on. There's only a few more downloads. I don't know what happened with that podcast with Mike's Carnage one, but it just took off like gangbusters, and every day it's been getting a download since it's been released.
It's a popular comic line, right? And
sure,
you and Mike have both got your own like kind of worlds that are colliding, and you're both really passionate what you're talking about in that comic. It all makes sense to me.
Yeah,
well deserved.
Yeah, absolutely. But it was someone had to knock you off the king. The king is dead. Long live the king of the podcasting episodes. But yeah, but I think that one's a fantastic one as well. The one we did. So yes, wonderful.
Does that make Mike Joffrey? Yeah, that's
absolutely. Yeah, I've always seen.
Good.
Even when I met him, and even when I'm going to his wedding in Stag Do, I still see him as Joffrey. I still see him as Joffrey. And Megan has to put up with that for the rest of her life.
Yeah.
I'm only messing, Mike. I'm only messing.
Unless she poisons him.
Yes. Well, thanks for that. But clearly, if I didn't do any Star Wars content, Mike would have never listened. You see that?
Good point.
You see that? That was his entry point. He wouldn't have listened, maybe, not until I did some Star Wars stuff. So even though we put ourselves through the Ewok movies, the benefit is Mike's friendship, because I suffered. And then he made Megan suffer through Visitor Q and myself. So finally, we have Tony. Spider Dan, I would say that I'm honored to be a part of any of these shows. My favorite things are when you and Angry Andy go all in on anything, really. End of Days was great, but the holiday special is the best of the best. And I vote that Jack is the guest for episode 300 as well.
I'm always available.
Absolutely.
I'm not sure one vote is enough to to confirm that quite yet, but I
mean, I don't know what.
As I said at the top, it's always an honor to do this with you. So.
Oh, absolutely, and I think our friendship has only grown since that. those 100 episodes before. Obviously, I've done a lot of other stuff that's not on the main feed, the Patreon stuff and the guest spots and all of this stuff. But you can find them all on the website. And the Patreon stuff you can find, but you got to pay. You got to pay the big bucks that everybody else is paying. But yeah, this has been great. I've really enjoyed it. Again, it's run a bit long, but it's episode 200. If it can't run long, what's the point?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's the celebration episode. So never have they come in under time in anything in the world, I don't think.
No. And again, we ignore the timers. There's no point to the timers. That we talked about it off air. I put a timer on. I don't listen to it. I'm like Rhea. Rhea doesn't look at her notes. I don't respond to the timer, even though I put it there. I only turn it off to stop the noise because it irritates me. And then I completely it all flies out my head. Then it just goes away. So yes. But Jack, even though this has been all about me, you have podcasts. You have your own podcast on your own feed now. This is all your own thing, and you're coming very close to the end of it. I guess it's.
I am. Can you believe it? I mean, I guess it had to happen eventually, didn't it? Yes.
I think Rhea said like, oh, it doesn't feel like there's been that many, but it also feels like there've been loads more, and I kind of agree. It's weird. It's strange. But yes, tell people about that and where they can find it.
So it's called A Back to the Filmography, and as my first subject, I chose to work my way from the very first appearance to the latest, by the time obviously it comes around, of Jason Statham, so the Stath. So we started with Lock, Stock, and we are currently, at time of recording, up to Furious 7.
Okay.
So that's episode 36. Obviously, by the time this comes out, I will be one or two more along. And you have an appearance upcoming, actually. You are going to come on with Andy to talk about Hobbs and Shaw. I've got my very own Hobbs and Shaw coming on the show to discuss that movie. I will let you two duke it out and decide which one's which. But yes, it means I've only got 8 left.
Wow.
Nine left, sorry.
9
left at this point, yeah.
Yeah. That I can't wait. I can't wait to do. I've seen one Fast and the Furious movie which did have the Stath in, which might have been 7, I think. But it was
the last one with Paul Walker, yeah?
Yeah, I think so. Or was it? Is that the one? Is it 8? Is it 8 when Vin turns bad?
Yes.
So that's the one I've seen. That's
okay. All right.
With Charlize Theron, and Stath's in the plane saving the baby. I think.
Yeah.
That's the one I've seen. Or Charlie Theron, as Chris pronounces it.
Of course. Why not?
But yeah, no, I'm can't wait for that. Again, I'm actually not going to watch any of them. I could watch all of them. I could get into the franchise. I could know all the continuity and everything. But I'm like, no, I'll come in fresh. I'll be one of those people.
It's supposed to be a sideways sequel anyway. So I think it's fun. It'll make sense for you just to drop in and see what the hell's going on.
Can't be worse than In the Name of the King anyway.
100% not.
That would have if you ever do a top 5 worst, that's going to be there. That is that all of them, all 5 will be that film, like all of them. Maybe what was it? London was London the other one?
Unfortunately, yes.
Yeah,
Revolver.
Oh yeah, Revolver as well. Yeah. So you've almost got your top 5 already.
Off the top of my head, there you go. Bing, bing, bing.
Brilliant. Yes, so I'll leave links and show notes and everything to you. And again, I've been on there. I've linked you on my website. You can go and check out my appearances. But don't just listen to my appearances. Listen to it all. Follow the filmography hashtag.
It's been a good journey.
Yeah, it's really good. And we've both come a long way, I think. And we've still got a long way to go. Miles to go before either of us sleep ever again. So, but yeah, this has been really good. I'm so glad people are still listening, still along for the ride. You especially, and everybody that is involved. And I've had a lot of kind of newer voices recently because I wanted to kind of again have a bit more variety as well in all of that, which is one of my key things. But we're going to be getting some old favorites back in the rest of the year. We've got Alien Month coming up. We'll have some old friends, yourself, Max, Paul, Tony, Rhea. I think that's everybody. So yeah, that'll be a real interesting group of people. But again, we'll have all the other stuff and the normal stuff. And again, Shockphobia Fest, Halloween, and Alternativity Stories, which we've already mentioned you will be a part of. Spoilers for that month that's coming. But yeah, it's going to be a blast. So you can find me at SpiderDan and secretballs.com. Always use the hashtag #PrepareForPrattle when you interact with us. And please subscribe to the Pop Culture newsletter, the Pop Culture Collective newsletter, I should say. I very rarely write for it, but I will promote it. I will promote the fuck out of it. I'm so bad at doing it. Mondays are not great for me, and that's always like, get it in. And I'm like, oh, it's like my busiest day, and I always forget, and something comes up or something happens, or I just don't want to deal with life. So apologies, Paul, but again, I missed it this Monday as well. Again, I think the last one I did was maybe 2 weeks ago to promote the X-Men thing. But yes, but yeah, check that out. Check out, go on Comics in Motion as well. Check out the new X-Men 97 podcast, which I'm covering with Max. I'll leave a link to that as well. Dave and Chris and everybody are letting me and Max run roughshod over the network, for the better or the worse. We're there and we're talking about X-Men, and it's fun. I won't be there for all of them because I'm going on a holiday again, but it's a real blast, and it's a fucking great show. It's a fucking great show, and what a debut! What a debut for and I'm sure there'll be a lot of people going, "The MCU is not dead. The MCU is back," like they do every fucking week. But anyway, I would like to thank my patrons on Patreon. So I am Jack's Musing, #1 with a bullet, Simon Cotton, Paul Mellon, Mike Burton, Angry Andy, Tonya Todd, Tony Farina, Math, Scott Hodgson, Rhea Carrigan, Sarah Coyne, and Pete Walton, one of our newest members. Thank you for your continuing donations. I would not get up to episode 200 without it. I hope you're enjoying all the content I'm providing on Patreon. Some really interesting Clyde Barker stuff I've been doing at the moment with some ongoing series, something a bit different, again, as opposed to kind of the one-offs and stuff. So, but you guys have, again, you don't get episode 200 without the patrons, all the people that care and listen and comment and do all those wonderful things. Caring mostly. You don't have to listen to every episode, but as long as you care and help and promote and everything, you have a special place in Prattle World, in the web of this this journey that I'm on and everything I've done. So, but yeah, there's no signs of stopping, so don't worry. But thank you again, Jack. You've been here since day one and you're still here, and let's hope we're both here for episode 300.
100%. Yes. Yeah.
But more than
all I had in my head all the way through was Field of Dreams for some reason.
build it.
Yeah.
Record it, and they will listen.
Absolutely. There you go. Let's paraphrase it. I love it. And
then we'll play baseball with your dad's dead ghost or something. I think that's what that film is about. Who knows? But yeah, you've been wonderful. Thank you again. Thank you for staying longer than planned as well, because this is what we do.
This is what we do.
And always, guys, prepare for a lot more Prattle. And again, hopefully for 100 episode more and 100 more episodes after that. But thank you all for listening, and thank you for being there in so many ways. Bye-bye.